Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories, where today, my mom stole $30,000 from my savings and I don't know how it happened. Last night, I checked my bank account to see that my mom had stolen about $30,000 from my savings account. The withdrawal showed up on my end as miscellaneous debit. My mom had stolen it last week and I didn't notice it until today, due to the fact that I only check my bank account around once a week. If you're wondering why I don't check it more often, it's just because my dad allows me to use his credit card for groceries while I'm in college, and I only ever buy groceries for myself. The only time I check my bank account is when I have to pay for some expense, bills, etc. My mom and I have not spoken in more than a year due to reasons that aren't really important. I'm just emphasizing that we do not have a relationship. My dad also does not speak to her, only through lawyers. When I first left her house at 18, my mom gave me nothing, withholding my birth certificate, ID, etc. I had to painstakingly replace everything. I finally was able to find a bank where I could open an account with the forms of ID that I could provide. I went to the bank alone and I opened a bank account. That bank account was opened by me. I was the only one who signed for it, and not even my dad had any access to it whatsoever. Of course, since I'm an adult. Fast forward to today, when I called the bank after seeing all the money from my savings account gone. This money I had saved up over the span of around a year, when my dad paid me generously while working for him. The bank revealed that it was my mom who took the money. The bank told me that my mom was a signer of my own bank account, and that my bank account was actually a joint account. This was a revelation to me as I opened this account on my own. I don't even know how my mom knew my savings account number, because again, I haven't spoken to her in over a year. They told me for this reason they could not file a dispute, but that I'd have to go to my local branch, which isn't local anymore since I moved away for college, to fix the problem, as they were the ones who transferred the money. Of course, I was just floored and confused. I asked how a joint account was made. They said that for a joint account to be created, both people had to be present. I went and made my account alone. I, of course, am going to have to follow all the steps after this, going to the original branch to see what happened, talking to the manager, closing the account, and I'm going to be switching banks altogether while this is being investigated. Can someone please tell me how my mom was able to do this? Was it a mistake on my end? How likely is it that I can get my money back? Edit to add information. My mom is a very powerful woman, and she's done things that are worse than this. I can't help but feel defeated already because she probably found a legal loophole. Update. So I took all of your guys' advice. First thing, I went and recovered my original physical documents from the bank at my dad's house. It's Thanksgiving break right now, so I was back in my hometown from school. I also looked at my original statements and saw that all of the accounts had only my name on them. This gave me so much hope that someone had messed up and I could get my money back. My dad took me to the bank with my cousin for moral support, and I spoke to the guy that had opened an account with a year and a half ago. What he told me made me feel like an idiot. My mom had opened a savings account back in 2011 where her and I were joint owners. Every time I was paid money to my checking, I was depositing it into my savings account. It turns out I had only opened a checkings account with that bank, and I was the sole owner of the checkings account, but the savings was owned by my mom and I. They told me, unfortunately, because of that, nothing she did was illegal, and I really couldn't do anything to get my money back. The reason why I didn't question anything was when I logged into the mobile portal they have, both the checking and savings account showed up, making me think that I had opened both when I had gone to the bank to open my checking. I was depositing money into this savings account with both my mom and I on it this whole time, and she was watching it build up so she could just take it all away. I'm disappointed, but there's nothing I can really do. I'm just blaming myself a lot, but like I said in my original post, I'm certainly not struggling with money, and so I'm blessed in that way. My dad has been really caring and supportive during this, telling me that it wasn't my fault and that she knew it was my money, so she shouldn't have touched it. This is all just a learning lesson. I'm definitely not making this mistake again. I think my dad blames himself for what happened because my mom became really bitter after their divorce. He offered to repay me all of the money on my mom's behalf, but I can't take that from him. It'll all come back eventually. Thank you for such good advice. I'm really grateful. I'm just gonna take this loss and choose to walk away. Just because she was legally entitled to withdraw the money from the bank does not make her legally entitled to the money. This can and should be a civil suit. It sucks to see manipulative parents get away with this crap. It's kind of a cut and dry case unless the mom can show she either contributed to the account or is in some way entitled to the money. Edit. I've worked in banking for 12 years. This is absolutely correct. OP should go public with this. Air her mom's actions so everybody knows exactly what she is. Man, it must be nice to be able to shrug off $30,000 as it'll come back eventually. Yeah, I'm guessing the fact that she saved that money in 1 year while working for her dad had at least some impact on the fact she didn't even realize what bank account it was in, and ultimately is pretty blasé about having lost it. My mother tried to trick me into joining my sister for dinner after she tested me around her husband. My sister recently got married. It's been about 3 to 4 months. I didn't really see much of them after the wedding, honeymoon, and then back to work. But once a month, our family all gets together and my parents host a huge feast. Since this took place a week ago, it was for the month of August. During this dinner, my brother-in-law was being extremely weird towards me. He was complimenting my body, ignoring my sister, and just straight up acting so strange. It was completely unexpected for several reasons. One being his wife was sitting right next to me. 2, he's only been married for a few months. Also, he's just never spoken to or about me like that before. I felt really uncomfortable, and I'm sure it transpired to the rest of the room because what the heck? Except it was weird because nobody was pointing anything out. I was extremely confused and just wanted to leave. I left early, but when I got home, I felt so icky. I don't even know how to describe it. I decided to message my sister and let her know his behavior made me uncomfortable. I told her that it was also concerning he felt comfortable enough to say these things in front of my parents and brother. I explained that if she didn't feel comfortable being in the middle, I wouldn't mind explaining this to him myself. His behavior was so unnerving that I FaceTimed my boyfriend who was away for work in the US. I told him it was weird and how suddenly my brother-in-law's behavior towards me went from that of a sibling to this horribly uncomfortable situation. He was upset, and rightfully so. My sister didn't respond to my texts until the next day. She asked to meet up, so I did. I was expecting her to be upset and to have him apologize for what he said. Instead, she admits that it was all a test and I passed it. I was confused to say the least. What did she mean by a test? Passed it? Like, what's going on? Turns out she had her husband do those things on purpose because she wanted to see how I would react if he had said those things to me and meant them. My reaction and choice to message her afterwards told her that I could be trusted around him. I was offended to say the least. Why would she think I couldn't be trusted? Well, let me tell you, in my opinion, her not very valid reason for this lack of trust. My sister has been married before. She was 27 and the divorce was about 10 months into the marriage. Her ex was a psycho to say the least. He had known me longer than he had known my sister. I was the one who had introduced them. They got along well and eventually started dating. It looked like the healthiest and most romantic relationship to grace planet Earth, except when they got married. During their marriage, I was staying with them because it was a closer commute to work. They had extra bedrooms, and I would pay rent and cook and clean for myself. My clothes would often go missing. It started off small. I just assumed it got mixed up in my sister's laundry and would turn up eventually, but it was happening more and more frequently. I kept pressuring my sister to admit that she was stealing them, and she was adamant it wasn't her. I decided to just ignore it and go about my day. Something I hadn't even considered an option was the real reason. My former brother-in-law was stealing them. He admitted he had never really loved my sister and was just using her to get to me. I was just so creeped out and I pressed charges. I was able to get a restraining order and my sister divorced him almost instantly after finding out. She used something horrible that happened to me and flipped it to make it seem like I'm the one who was untrustworthy. She claimed I must have strung him along for him to think like that, and the test was to just prove that I wasn't doing it again. Safe to say, I was extremely hurt and angry by her response, so I told her to never speak to me or contact me again if that's what she really thought of me. My family found out and for the most part agrees that her behavior is crazy. But my mother stood by her actions and said my sister was just trying to protect herself from being hurt again. I told her if she had just been honest with me from the start, I wouldn't have been as bothered. There's a right way to approach things and a wrong way. This isn't just wrong, it's also crazy. Why is she so adamant it's my life goal to hurt her? I didn't know that her ex was going to turn out crazy like that, so why am I being punished? She claimed I should have had some indication he liked me, but he really made it seem like he was head over heels for my sister. How am I supposed to know what's going on in someone else's mind? Anyway, The family dinner was earlier for this month as it was the most compatible date for everyone's schedule, yesterday. I told my parents to expect me not to show up if my sister and brother-in-law were going. It wasn't even because I refused to ever speak to her again. I had just said that because the situation was so fresh, I told my mother I would apologize when I had cooled down a bit. It was just difficult to face them when they made me feel like a horrible person for a situation that was out of my control. My mother assured me my sister wouldn't attend, so I agreed to come over. When I arrived, they were both there. It felt like an ambush, and it sort of was. My sister demanded I apologize for my reaction because it was my own fault it happened in the first place. I can't lie, I snapped. I told her she should remove my number and the title of being my sister if she really felt that way. I just need advice because therapy isn't scheduled for another 2 weeks, and I feel like I just dreamt a soap opera storyline. I feel kind of bad because I do understand my sister had her trust completely broken by her ex, but I feel like that distrust shouldn't be aimed at me, but the person who actually caused it, and I was the one who introduced her to the jerk in the first place, so I feel guilty for that already. I was just about healing from her former marriage, and now this one is also putting me in a very uncomfortable position. With my sister, my brother-in-law, and my own mother. Any advice on how to tackle apologizing, getting my sister's trust back, and showing her I truly just want the best for her? What were your father and other family members doing during this charade? Why didn't anyone speak up for you or have your back? Really creepy. You deserve to be treated better by everyone who was there. OP. My dad wasn't pleased with what my brother-in-law had said during the August dinner. Then when he found out the plan, he forbade him from entering the family home again. My mother lied and said that he wasn't invited, but they showed up anyway. Apparently, he was livid and threatened to call the police if they didn't leave. I left after I said what I said, so I don't know what happened, but my brother called me and told me everything that went down from when I left the August dinner and this month's dinner. Stop. You have absolutely nothing to apologize for. What they did to you was completely messed up. Who even comes up with these things? So this entire time she's had this home-wrecking image of you? That's so hurtful. They owe you an apology. OP. This is what hurts the most. She really thinks it's my life goal to cause her misery. It's so exhausting. I miss my sister from before all of this crap happened. The one who loved and trusted me above anyone else. Update. A lot has happened the past couple of days. I've tried to read all the comments and take everyone's advice, and this has been the outcome. I lost a sister and a mother in 2 days. It's heartbreaking more than anything. I had to meet up with everyone. My boyfriend came with me, so I had support during the conversation. Honestly, it was hard to look at any of them for the way they treated me. I'm so thankful to everyone opening my eyes to the crazy behavior exhibited in the first part of this story. In front of everyone, my mother admitted to knowing about the plans from the start. Sister confided in her and she agreed it was a good idea. She supported her son-in-law openly harassing me. I'm in complete shock, and it just hurts so much knowing she would condone this considering she knows how much I was affected by the first husband. She knew I was having a difficult time in therapy. It took me a long time to trust people again after that, and I feel like once again my trust has been broken. I don't know how I'm ever going to trust anyone again. I'm really thankful my boyfriend was there to comfort me because it was so hard keeping my composure around them. My sister was not budging at all. She kept maintaining that she was right. She said the only reason I wouldn't apologize is because deep down I knew what her ex was like. She said I just liked getting attention from him knowing that he was married to my sister. She also claimed that I overreacted. I told her she shouldn't expect any calls or texts or just not to be contacted by me until I receive the apology I deserve from both her and my brother-in-law. Speaking of, he was pretty silent throughout the whole thing, probably because my father threatened him if he spoke bad about me. He did say that the only reason he did it was to placate my sister because she kept accusing him of ogling me. But still, no apology from him. My mother, this one broke my heart the most. She told me I was over-exaggerating and that I should be happy to have passed my sister's test. She actually said the words, "We can all move on now." I was in complete awe, to be honest. How could she think that things would just go back to normal after this? I asked why she was supporting such delusional behavior, and she said it was because she loved my sister and wanted her to be happy. I asked her if she loved me as much as my sister. She said yes. It seemed hesitant, but I don't want to read too much into that. I told her I wanted an apology for her schemes. She refused, so I gave her the same conditions I gave my sister and brother-in-law. Until I get an apology, I simply am not speaking to all three of them. As a result, I also probably have to go low contact with my brother and dad because they both live with my mother. I mean, I'll hang out with them outside and without the presence of my mother, but if she'll let them is the question. I know some of you suggested spending time with my boyfriend's family on holidays and occasions. I haven't met my boyfriend's family because they live in the US, but after this situation, I've taken 2 weeks paid holiday for the end of this month and he's taking me to meet them for the first time. I hope it goes well because they might be the only family that I have now. My therapy session has been moved to tomorrow because I requested an emergency appointment. Wish me luck. Deny me a raise because you want to steal my husband? Enjoy unemployment. Many moons ago, think early 2000s, I worked for a small tech company in the Midwest. I started out as a customer service rep. My husband also worked there in a higher level position in a different department. There was an office manager there who did not like me at all when I got hired. She originally was a billing rep and got moved to the office manager position when the original one who hired me quit. As an added note, her brother also worked there in the same department as my husband. I was pretty much a model employee. My stats were great, I was always on time, and customer feedback surveys were always glowing when I was on shift. However, it seemed like she had it out for me because she was always trying to find something to nitpick about my performance. I divulged all this to my husband, and he admitted that prior to us getting together and before I was hired, she had expressed interest in dating him, but he rejected her. I complained to the owner, but he pretty much just shrugged it off because she had been there forever and he didn't want to rock the boat. Come performance review time, and she gave me a terrible review and a tiny raise, along the lines of everyone else on the team getting 50 cents to $1 per hour raise, and she gave me a nickel. About 6 months later, there was a big shakeup in the company, and the general manager and 2 higher-level people from my husband's department left to work at another company who did the same type of business. Shortly thereafter, a couple big accounts my boss was pursuing ended up going to the other company. Thinking that perhaps information about the accounts he was trying to land was leaked to the other company, he sent a couple people home, with pay, for 2 days while he investigated, including the office manager who hated me. On day 2, he met with the team and confirmed that there was no leak, so he would be bringing the workers back in. Cue petty revenge. I had found the office manager's blog some time ago, and she had been posting frequent updates since the shakeup. When she was sent home, she posted multiple updates about the situation, including how she figured the owner would mess up payroll, not pay taxes, and get in trouble with the IRS. She also posted some pretty nasty things about the owner. She did make a feeble attempt to keep it anonymous by spelling everyone's names backwards and making up a fake name for the company, but it was very clear it was her and our company she was talking about. After the team meeting, I asked to meet with my boss alone and showed him all of the posts. He dug in and found even more stuff she had written, including how she couldn't stand me and wanted to get me fired. I hadn't even seen that post until then. I couldn't contain my grin when she returned to the office, only to be told to pack up her stuff and go. Within a year, I had a big pay bump and a promotion to management, and I assume she's off somewhere making people miserable. Am I the jerk for refusing to help my sister out when I'm the only person in our family she lives close to and she has kids? I, 31 female, have not spoken to my sister in 10 years after she had an affair with my ex. I was with my ex from the age of 15 until we were 20. My sister was 19 at the time, and the affair had been ongoing. Most likely, they started the affair not that long after my sister turned 18. My ex was the same age as me. My ex proposed to me while we were together. My sister was helping with that and encouraging me to marry him before he proposed. This was so he would be around and they could keep hooking up. We got engaged, and a few months later, my sister told me I couldn't marry him because she was pregnant with his baby. She tried to salvage a relationship with me and asked me to understand and not be mad at her. I told her she was disgusting and I would never forgive her. I also told our parents what she had done. I saw my sister once after her first was born, a year or so after I had learned about the affair. She told me she missed me and she wanted her daughter to know her aunt. She tried her best to get me to at least agree to a relationship with her daughter, but I told her it was not possible and I was still not going to forgive her, and I told her not to talk to me again. My parents and extended family also stopped talking to her when she started dating him for real, and they only resumed contact after they broke up. Then they supported her because of the kids. My parents couldn't bring themselves to turn their backs on their grandkids or to sever the relationship forever. I was fine with it because I do understand, but her having kids was not an incentive for me to repair things. I'm now happily married and a mom myself. A few weeks ago, my parents called and told me that my sister has been living 20 minutes from me for the last 2 years. They know I don't want to talk about her, so until this point, they had not. She moved out of state for a job, and then she lost the job, and her landlord had told her she needed to be out in 60 days because he was repurposing the house. Without her original job, and with no support network here, she had turned to them. She didn't want to pull her kids away from the place they were used to now, and so my parents decided I should be the one to help. They told me I could help her by putting her in touch with people for a job and maybe another rental. It would be so amazing. They wanted me to step in before the 60 days was up. I refused to help, and I told them I will never do a single thing for her again. They pleaded with me to reconsider and told me to think of the kids. They asked me if I really hated my sister that much, and I said yes. I told them it was bad enough of her to be the affair partner, but to encourage me to get engaged and help him plan it while they were cheating behind my back was such a low thing to do. I said the fact she stayed long enough to have another kid with him also showed how little she really cared about me. They told me to be a better person than this. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Your parents are fine to resume their relationship with their daughter separate from you, but they are completely out of line in demanding you do anything, and then trying to shame you when you do not comply is disgusting. They're the ones that need to be better people. No contact is no contact. It doesn't mean no contact until I need to use you and your resources. Hard pass. The person most obligated to help the kids is their father, and the people obligated to help her, if any, are her parents. Entitled Mother Wants to Sue Therapist for Saving Her Kid's Life. The year is 2017. I was on therapy for a lot of problems. My many and varied problems had also caused me a very deep depression, and despite 10 years of therapy, I was unable to have any improvement. My psychologist, an adorable woman whom I had only seen for a year, asked me to have a session with my mother too. She wasn't happy about it, but somehow the psychologist managed to convince her. This is how the session went. For this post, my fictitious names will be Bob for the name of choice and Rose for my birth name. Therapist. Hi Bob, how are you feeling? Me. I'm okay, thank you. Entitled Mom. Good evening. Why did you ask me to come here today? Therapist. Madam, your son tried to hurt himself a few days ago. I need to talk about it with you. Entitled Mom. My daughter is fine, as you can see. Therapist. Madam, people do not attempt things like this as a hobby. Your son is suffering from a very evident discomfort for all to see. Well, I don't see any discomfort except what you're putting in her head. Therapist. Excuse me? She was a very normal person before coming here, and now she's babbling all this nonsense that you put in her head. Me. Mom, actually, I came to her for exactly this reason, and not the other way around. No, you came here because you said someone hurt you. Therapist. It's not a matter of saying it, it's true. However... Therapist. In any case, that's not why I asked you to come here today. Entitled Mom. But is it true or not that you told my daughter that she should stay away from me? Therapist. I repeat, that's not the subject. Is it true or not? Therapist. Yes, that's true. And this exact behavior is the reason. You understand that your son has attempted... How dare you tell my daughter to stay away from me? Me. Son. Entitled Mom. Rose, shut up. Me. My name is Bob, Mom. Bob! See what she says? I will sue you. It was you who put those things in her head. She's my daughter. Therapist. Madam, your son 2 days ago tried to hurt himself. May I ask you why you're talking to me about matters that have nothing to do with that? Aren't you worried about what he did? I've seen her search history on the internet. Do you have any idea what she has been looking at? Therapist. Madam. What? I'm sick of dealing with you freaks. Therapist. I insist on pointing out that your son needs help right now. So what? You want her to leave home and pretend to be something she's not? I'm entitled to talk about this very subject when I want to. Me. I don't pretend, Mom. That's what life is like. If you listened instead of just screaming, shut up, Rose, shut up. I don't care if this jerk has convinced you that you can be something you're not. You are and will always be a woman. I'm about to cry, so I leave the room. Therapist. How can you say you don't care when he's going through this? Is she alive? Yes. So what do you want from me? Having left, I no longer heard the rest of the conversation, but my mother proceeded with pressing charges and still hates that therapist. Principal attempts to teach student manners. Special ops soldier. This story goes back more than a few years, and I still tell it to people at parties to this day. Let me set the scene. I graduated from high school and college. Even though I was 24, I had a very young-looking face and was often carded at bars and liquor stores. I got married and joined the U.S. Army. After going through special ops training to include airborne school, I was tasked with a recruiting duty that we had to go to high schools and see if we could inspire young men and women to join the military. Of course, this isn't allowed anymore. I told you that this was more than a few years ago. 1990s. I was pushing 28. Going to high schools was something that we did a few times a week while on the recurring duty. The local Army recruiter would request our group to volunteer some soldiers that were not deployed or on assignment and accompany them to the high school and set up displays and such. This was always from a large box truck and a small transport bus. Well, here are the actors in this disaster. We've got the stupid teacher. We've got the principal. We've got me, staff sergeant in the Army. We've got Army Recruiter 1 and Army Recruiter 2. So we got up at 0:30 and packed the truck, packed our uniforms in the bus, and proceeded to grab chow and head to designated high school. We talked and chatted and drank our coffee and waited for the 90-minute drive to the high school to be over. We arrived, and since we were going to be doing work, we weren't allowed to be in dress uniform with beret and all, so they allowed us to be in jeans and sweatshirts. Now I remind you that I am young, in shape, short hair, clean-shaven, and with a young baby face, even at the ripe old age of 28. After the displays were put together, the extension cords taped down, and we were hanging out waiting for our presentation. Some of us went back to the bus to grab some coffee, and I stepped in front of the box truck to have a smoke. Hey, it was the 90s and it was the time. Smoking and coffee was the vibe in the military back then. Now this box truck was parked out back of the high school and was considered a loading area. So I was in front of the box truck having a cigarette and leaning against the front of the truck. That's when I heard it. Stupid teacher. Are you comfortable? Me. Yes, ma'am. Got everything you need? Yes, ma'am. Don't you think you should take yourself back into the school right now? Me. What? Oh, you've lost your manners all of a sudden? Get your butt back inside that school right now. Yelling in a high tone that would have upset every dog in the country. Me. Ma'am, I'm not. Oh, yes, you are. Me. Ma'am, I'm trying to explain. If you will just. Stupid teacher cuts me off and grabs my arm. I said march, young man, before you regret it. Me. Get your hands off me. You should know better. Pulling out of her grip. Fine, I'll get principal. And don't say I didn't warn you, you little jerk. I was shocked at her behavior. This wasn't a big school, maybe 800 kids in a rural area. So I proceeded to finish my cigarette and my coffee, and I heard footsteps and yelling. This was enough to get the attention of the military men and women in the bus and the kids running laps on the field and the kids inside the classrooms on that side of the building. I mean, I was wearing dog tags under my shirt and a wedding ring. Really? Stupid teacher. He's over there. Principal. Who the heck do you think you are? You think you can just come have a smoke and coffee and skip class? How would you like me to knock some sense into you, you arrogant jerk? Me, annoyed. Look, I tried to explain. Lady, I don't go to school here. I'm telling you the same thing. I don't go to school here. I'm here for. You're here to get an education. You want a butt kicking to go with that lesson today? Well, I had enough. If he wanted to teach me a lesson, fine. Me, I've had enough. You can buzz off and take her with you. You have no idea who I am, but I'd like to know who you think you are threatening people like this. I put my cigarette in my mouth and reached for my wallet. Me, I'll show you who I am, jerk. Principal smacks the cigarette out of my mouth and grazes my nose. He grabs my sweatshirt. Principal, I'll teach you some manners, you jerk. Boom, scream, thud, pop. The sound of gravel. Recruiter 1, Whoa, whoa, whoa! Stop, stop, stop! Recruiter 2. What are you doing? Principal, muffled groan as his face was in the ground. Recruiter 2. Principal, this is Staff Sergeant. He's part of our Special Forces recruiting team today. What on earth are you doing? Recruiter 1. Staff Sergeant, would you like to let Principal off the ground, please? Me. Sure. He's not going to do any more harm. Teacher looked like she had just seen a train wreck and still couldn't look away. Me. Hey, teacher, you might want to call an ambulance. He has a broken nose and a dislocated shoulder. He's going to need medical attention. Recruiters 1 and 2 were just stunned, not knowing what to do. By this time, it must have gotten around school. There were classrooms and windows on the back side of the school, as well as a gym class that was running laps around a field. Me. Should I get my uniform on or just chill on the bus? Recruiter 1. No, we need your appearance for this presentation. Me. Shrug. Okay. I got my uniform on while watching the EMTs put Principal on a stretcher and take him away. I groomed myself up, put my beret on, and walked out of the bus. Went into the school and into the auditorium. Recruiter 1. So that is why we are here today. To explain your service opportunities and here to explain the Elite Forces training and perspective, I'd like to introduce Staff Sergeant. Thunderous applause and standing ovation. We were all a bit confused. Standing ovation? We thought it was for the beret. Come to find out, they were clapping because Principal had been a jerk and roughed up students to shape them up. He had only been there 2 years and everyone hated him except for stupid teacher. Another teacher heard that Principal had gotten his butt handed to him and told us it was the talk of the school, like taking out the bully on the playground. He said it made his day. He wasn't Principal very much longer after that. He took medical time off and then left the school system to take a job at another school out of state. I heard from recruiters 1 and 2 that the next year, when they went to do their presentation, they asked who we were going to rough up this year. They had a math teacher that everyone disliked. This was in jest, only a joke. I still remember the look on Principal's face as he thought he was picking on a student and grabbed a member of the U.S. Army Special Ops. It was a mix of confusion, fear, and the classic, "What the heck is this?" Then being put into the ambulance with his tail between his legs. I'm generally not a violent person. After being in the U.S. military for over 15 years, I would rather walk away than get physical. But that one incident, yeah, he had it coming. Karen got what she had coming. Characters. We've got me. We've got Ross, the big boss, the manager from the company/client. We've got Karen, the service manager, conveniently named Karen. We've got Greg, good guy Greg, my colleague, the one who messaged me today. Story. I was on a conference call with Ross, Greg, and some people from a different site. Me, Ross, and Greg were all sitting in a different location in the building. It was one of those meetings where you listen for an hour and only speak to say bye at the end. I had my noise-canceling headphones with microphone on, which had the company's logo on it. Ross gave it to me when I signed the contract with the company, as it was a leftover from the Christmas presents they all got. Suddenly, Karen yanks the headphones off my head and starts yelling. Karen, answer me instead of listening to music, you weasel. I just sat there with my mouth open in shock, as I hadn't seen or heard her approaching me. Karen, and who the heck did you steal these headphones from? They are for internals only. Me, but they're mine. Due to the initial shock, I couldn't find the words to explain I got transitioned to internal when she was on her month-long holiday in December, and clearly she didn't get the memo. Karen, stop lying to me, jerk. Consider yourself fired. Me, finding my composure back. You can't fire me. I don't work for you. And even if I did, you have no right to talk to me like that. At this point, my phone beeped. I glanced at my screen and I saw a message from Greg. You are not on mute. Ross and me can hear the whole thing. Karen, you are a lying jerk, and stop looking at your phone when I'm talking to you. Me, I don't work for you anymore, and if you keep talking to me like that, I will call security to have you removed. Who the heck do you think? She was interrupted by her own phone ringing, which apparently was a call from Ross. She answers her phone with all the fake jolliness she could muster after her tirade against me. But after that, all I heard her say was, "Oh, no, sir," and "Yes, sir." Maybe I have to note that Ross, my manager, was the most senior manager on our site and therefore also the country manager, who signed the contract with my old employer for which Karen worked. This was the only time in my life I saw someone age 20 years in a mere 15 seconds. Her face shifted from red to white as if someone flipped a light switch. She hung up and left without saying another word to me. Later, I found out people had complained about her behavior before, but now she was caught red-handed, and my manager made sure her services were not needed anymore. She also got fired from my old employer as the company was their biggest contract and they couldn't afford to lose it due to Karen's actions. In some way, I have to thank her though, as I haven't had any problems with shutting down someone ever since that event. Entitled mom will do anything to obtain her son's favorite newspaper. A few months ago, I worked as a paper boy. As the name suggests, my job was to deliver papers in the morning, usually from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. Prior to the event I'm about to describe, a woman had been standing outside her house to smoke at around halfway through my round, usually staring at me as I rode past on my bike. I had never seen this lady before. It's important to know that I was delivering paid papers, so there were specific houses to deliver to, instead of delivering to the entire road. On the morning of the event, I'd woken up as usual, dragged myself out of bed and onto my bike, picked up the papers, and started to deliver. Everything went as usual until I reached the woman I described earlier. This time, she approached me. We've got entitled mom, we've got the kid, and we've got me. The entitled mom approaches me and my bike as I walk up to the house beside hers to deliver a paper. Entitled mom, hey, you got any spare Daily Mails? A British newspaper, tabloid. Me, no, I've got the exact amount I need, no more. Well, that sucks. Me, I don't see how. You don't suppose I could give you a couple quid and you could give me one? Quid equals pounds, basically the equivalent of bucks in the US. Me, I'd lose my job, no chance. You could always pop down to the newsagents to get one. Don't you understand? I need one now. Newsagents is half an hour walk away. Me, so? I'm not losing my job so you don't have to walk for half an hour. The entitled mom starts to get angry. Listen, my son loves reading his mail, referencing to the Daily Mail newspaper I mentioned earlier. My car's messed up and I can't be bothered to walk. All you have to do is give me one and you get 2 quid for free. Me, seeing as I get decent pay, above 15 pounds a week, I think that won't be necessary. Entitled mom begins to walk towards my paper bag. Me, hey, back off! Entitled mom is shouting now. You've lost your chance at 2 quid. It was your choice and you threw it away. As with the rest of the street, she's woken up her son. She and I argue for around 30 seconds with nothing said of note until her son comes to the doorway. He looks around 4 years old, which is most definitely not a suitable age to be reading the Daily Mail at. Kid, Mummy, where is my breakfast? Entitled mom, red-faced by now. Go inside, now! Kid looks like he's about to cry and reluctantly trudges inside. Me, nice job. Entitled mom, shut up. Me, have a pleasant morning. I cycle away and finish my deliveries, around 10 minutes behind my usual time. I know usually people want some sort of righteous ending or she gets arrested or sued for X amount of money, but literally nothing happened after this. All I got was a bad taste in my mouth for the rest of the day, and all she got was an irritated kid at 6 a.m., which she most likely deserved. Karen mistook me as an idiot. Okay, so in this story I'll give you some background. I'm 18. My brother-in-law is the owner of the hotel in this story. There's a restaurant in the hotel too. This hotel is located in Kerala, India, and this was a tourist season, so the place was full of tourists, including Americans. Characters. We've got Karen. We've got my brother-in-law. We've got the general manager. We've got me. And we've got the waiter. My brother-in-law and manager were having breakfast in the restaurant. Sitting next to us is Karen, tanned, a tourist, and also not a resident of the hotel, obviously only there for a meal. My brother-in-law gets up from the table to go do a few things outside the hotel, but would be back in half an hour. General manager joins him. This means that I'm the next person of authority in the hotel. As waiter hands Karen the check, she takes one look at it, and this is how it went. Karen, I know the owner. He said that the food is free for me. Waiter, I'm sorry ma'am, but we would require some confirmation from him for you to get a discount. Karen, I told you, I know the owner. Waiter, How, ma'am? Are you his friend or relative? I'm his cousin. Now, I obviously had to step in, as she wasn't. We had no Americans in his side of the family, even half Americans, so I'm now sure she was lying. Me. I'm sorry, is there a problem? Waiter. Ma'am, she's claiming she knows the owner here. Karen. Why is a teenager actually even talking to me? Do you work here? I demand to see the general manager. Me. I do work here, but as I stop myself because I want to see how this plays out. Waiter. I'm sorry, ma'am. The general manager has stepped outside for some time. I'm calling the owner. You're going to be fired. She's now shouting a bit. My brother-in-law's phone is still on our table, and so I keep an eye on it to see if it was ringing. She's now speaking into the phone, pretending to speak to the person. She turns off her phone, turns to us, and says to waiter and me, You're fired, and you too, pointing at me. Me. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to pay and leave, or I'll call the cops. How dare you? Who do you think you are? Nee. I'm the owner's sister-in-law. Karen. What? Nee. Pay the bill and leave. She still refused and called me names. Got the hotel security to kick her out and get the money out of her. Turns out she pulled this at other hotels and restaurants too. Karen tries to kick my nephew out of his house. A little bit of backstory. My nephew, let's call him A, is currently engaged to his girlfriend of 4 years. Let's call her B. A few months back, she found out she was pregnant and she's due July 19th for a boy. I've never seen my nephew so happy, and his fiancée is a wonderful woman, and they plan to get married, but are taking it slow and wanting to have the baby and let B finish up college, as she only has one more semester to go. Anyway, apparently B's mother is a nightmare. Unfortunately, she hates A. She wanted her daughter to marry a doctor or a lawyer, basically someone with money, and my nephew, who is a manager with city maintenance, just isn't good enough. And when she learned her daughter was pregnant, practically disowned her outright. That didn't last long, as she needed B to babysit her 4 other siblings so her mom could go out partying and drinking as she always did. She used B as practically her slave. B cooked, cleaned, babysat, and took care of everything so her mom wouldn't have to lift a finger. Now that B is getting closer to her delivery date, she can't do everything her mom is asking of her, and she had recently moved into A's apartment. They got a place together so they can set up the nursery and such and start planning their life. B's mom went ballistic on her, screaming and yelling at the top of her lungs how she can't just abandon her and her siblings like this. Her mom didn't care about her. Honestly, I think what she cared about is that she was losing her cook, maid, and babysitter. B did all these things for free and knew it was all going to stop as soon as B had her baby. B tried to tell her that she would happily visit her mom and her brothers and sisters could visit anytime they wanted, but of course, that wasn't what she wanted. She wanted her slave back, and that simply wasn't going to happen. Recently, B woke up with some minor bleeding and was rushed to the hospital, and due to the lockdown, A wasn't allowed to see her when she was being treated. Everything is okay, by the way. B's mom showed up and was screaming and throwing a tantrum since she could not see my baby. No one could see her. They are in lockdown right now, and it's a risk they will not take. A had talked her down on the phone and offered her that option, but it simply wasn't good enough. She was told to calm down or she would have to leave, so she behaved herself. B apparently needed to be kept overnight for observation to make sure everything was okay, and A wasn't about to go home for the night. B insisted he go home and not just sit around at the hospital. When the mother-in-law started screaming again how she couldn't leave B all alone like this and she lived too far away. She did live almost 2 to 3 hours, not sure exactly. Well, even though she has been nothing but unkind, my nephew offered her their spare bedroom. It was set up a little like a nursery, but they had an inflatable mattress, and it would be fine for her to stay with him so she would be close by. She initially agreed, but apparently when they arrived home, she kept on staring at my nephew, like expecting something, and as he tells it, this is how the conversation went. "What are you waiting for?" she asked, apparently very snobby. "What do you mean? I'm about to call B if you want to join for a FaceTime talk," he said. "I mean, what are you still doing here? You need to leave if I'm staying here. I don't want you here," she snapped. "Listen, I offered you a place to stay while B is in the hospital, but this is my apartment, and I'm not going anywhere. You can stay here if you like, but you can't expect me to leave just because you're here." He couldn't believe this lady wanted him to leave. "Just get out of here right now. I have every right to be here and you don't. She's my daughter, and you have ruined her life," she screamed. "That's it. Get out of my apartment right now. You have no right to say such horrible things to me. We are in love and we are getting married. We're having a son, and nothing you do or say can change that. And regardless of everything, you only have a right to stay here under my invitation, as this is my place. You can find a hotel for all I care. Now get out, or do I need to call the police?" Apparently, he was firm. He had always tried to be nice to her for B's sake, but he was apparently stressed and worried with her in the hospital and didn't feel like being her punching bag that night of all nights. She left, saying a few things about this apartment being disgusting and she couldn't sleep there anyway, and got a hotel as far as A knew. He wasn't sure, because when B was discharged, she was nowhere in sight, and B tried calling her but got no answer. We guess she went out and got drunk somewhere, but we're sure she will call wanting B to come back home. B has a new home now and is starting her life, and I hope her mom will realize that she will lose her if she doesn't shape up. I was earlier considering myself lucky that aside from my sister's moments of entitlement, it's mostly just selfishness, and as bad as she is nothing compared to this woman. We are inheriting a very entitled parent through marriage. Oh joy. You want to speak to the supervisor? While in college, I worked as the escalated transfer supervisor at a call center for a large Canadian pizza chain. One New Year's Eve, it was so busy in the call center that the customer service department started taking orders to ease the traffic, myself included. Suddenly, I get connected with Karen. Before I even have a chance to speak, she's already irate and rude. Karen: "Why the heck was I on hold for 30 minutes? Me: "I apologize for the wait, but it's New Year's Eve and everyone in the country is ordering pizza." Karen: "That is unacceptable. I demand to speak to a customer service agent." Me: "I can transfer you if you'd like, but I am in the customer service department and can talk to you about your complaint." "Like heck you are. Transfer me to customer service immediately." Me: "Okay, but due to the busy day, you may be on hold for a while." "I said now." So I added her to my customer service queue, which was 20 calls deep. After 30 minutes, she's up. Me: "Hi, you've reached our company customer service. My name is Superfla. How may I help you?" Karen yelling: "I was on hold for 30 minutes waiting. Hold on, wasn't I just speaking to you?" Me: "Yes, me." Karen still yelling: "This is outrageous. I insist on speaking to the manager." Me: "Absolutely, please hold." Add her to my queue once again. Now keep in mind that the escalated transfer supervisor, me, is the final stage of customer service, and I hold all the power. I continue to take orders for another 25 minutes or so, then pick up Karen's call. Me: "Hi there, you've reached Superfla. I believe you asked to speak to a manager. How can I help?" Karen in a desperate tone: "You're the manager too?" Me: "Yes, me. You see, because it is so busy, I've been taking calls all day to ease the traffic and make things run a little quicker." Karen: "Oh my goodness, I've been waiting for over an hour." Me: "I did tell you that I could help when I took your initial call." "You did." Me: "Would you like me to take your order now?" "Yes." It was so satisfying to let all the air out of her like that. Entitled mom wants my sister fired because the fryer is out of order. This isn't my story, but one my sister told me that happened to her. My sister is 17 and is working her first job at Sesame Place. This was her third day on the job, and she had completed her work training the day before. She's a hostess at one of the restaurants inside the park. Sometimes she will do her hostess job, and other times she will go into the kitchen to bake funnel cakes and stuff like that. She wants her college major to be culinary. This is the cast of the story. Entitled Mom, we've got Polite Kid, got Poor Dad, we've got My Sister, we've got Clumsy Manager, and Cashier. The fryer that day used to make funnel cake went out of order, while Polite Kid placed his, just so you know. Also, this isn't a 0 to 100 stereotype story, as the woman was already ticked off before walking into the restaurant. Polite Kid arrives to the counter, and the following dialogue occurs. "Hi, can I please have 2 medium cakes, a small Sprite, and a large funnel cake?" Cashier: "Yes, buddy, I'll get that for you now. That will be this much. I don't know the amount. Okay, here's my mommy's card. Polite kid puts pin in card reader. Polite kid gets all 3 drinks and is told that my sister will bring them the cake in about 5 minutes. Right after the order is placed, the fryer used to make the funnel cake breaks, as in the tube that takes the used oil out of the fryer got clogged and they had to unclog it. My sister went out to polite kid's table to let them know what had happened. Sister: Hi, I just came to let you know that the funnel cake will be a bit late because of some issues with the fryer. If you would like, I could give you 3 a free refill while you wait. Poor dad: Sounds good. As long as we get our cake, then you… Surprise, surprise. Entitled mom turns on ghetto mode.
What you mean we ain't getting our cake? Give me my money then if we ain't gonna get it.
Polite dad: Yo, babe, she said that it's coming a little late. Not that we aren't getting it.
I said give me my dang money now, or I'll get your jerk butt fired. Now, where's your boss at? You gone?
Mind you, this is my sister's first day on the floor and never worked a job before, so she didn't know how to react, and she was tearing up and apologizing to them over and over again and getting 2 different reactions, one from each parent. Luckily, the manager hears the commotion and storms out to the dining floor and slams a $10 bill on the table. Here's your refund. Now get the heck out.
I paid?
Amount less than $10.
For the cake. Why are you giving me more?
So you can shut up and leave. You mess up every employee's day that works in this restaurant, but you ain't messing with my new employees. Look at her. You ruined her day with your BS. You gone. Security will show you the door to leave the park. You're not welcome back here anymore. The manager wasn't taking any crap today. Within 5 minutes, they showed up and escorted the family out of the park. 2 days later, poor dad calls my sister's restaurant to apologize for his wife's behavior, how the park was supposed to be polite kids present for moving on from kindergarten to 1st grade. He also joked about if the funnel cake was ready yet. Entitled parent trespasses on our property after dark and gets bitten by our German Shepherd. I had a very large, very protective German Shepherd named Kaiser. We never trained him to be protective, but he was naturally so. We had a fence around our entire home and yard, with the exception of the side door off the kitchen. The fence stopped on either side of the doors. I had a "Beware of dog, no trespassing" sign every 15 feet along our fence line. People who knew us knew to come around to the side door. This system worked beautifully for 10 years. We've got our entitled person, we've got myself, and we've got our Karen. I should mention that entitled person was friends with my brother. He had been to our home on a few occasions, but always with my brother. Kaiser loved my brother, so Kaiser was okay with entitled person being there. My son had a for sale sign on his truck, and his phone number was listed as well. He had had several inquiries, all by phone. Because those people can read, apparently entitled person could not. I was home alone one night. I should mention we had 5 dogs. Kaiser was outside. All 4 other dogs were in the house, being lazy and sleeping in various spots. It was dark outside and all the lights in my home were off, but my bedroom light towards the back of the house. It looked as if no one was home. This is important later. About 6:30 p.m. my phone rings. I see Karen's number pop up. I only have her number because her husband, who is a nice guy, is our mechanic. Me: Hello? Karen:
Your dog bit someone.
Her voice was a highly judgmental in an almost Karen-like manner. I jump up in a panic to see if somehow my dog got out of our fenced yard. Gate is latched and locked. I see Kaiser laying on the porch. He looks sleepy and relaxed and wags his tail at me and lays back down. My sweet baby boy, watching over us like always. I am relieved to see him inside the yard and gate still closed. Me: What? How? All my dogs are home. I don't understand. Karen:
No.
She literally starts every sentence with
Entitled person went to your house to talk to your son about buying the truck, and Kaiser jumped up and bit him. His hand is torn to shreds.
Me: Why was entitled person even trying to come in my yard? I have "Beware of dog, no trespassing" signs everywhere. Plus, my gate is locked. This makes no sense. Karen: I don't know, but his hand is pretty bad. He wants to know if your dog has all his shots. Me: does entitled person have all his shots? I let her know I have insurance, and if entitled person needs to see a doctor, he should go ahead, but I would also be reporting the dog bite and the trespassing onto my property. I have to for the sake of my insurance company. At this point, I am more than a little annoyed. Dog bites are serious accusations. Karen: he doesn't want to go to a doctor. That's why he came to me. She used to work for a vet. I've cleaned his hand and wrapped it up. We just want to make sure Kaiser had all his shots. Okay, whatever. I reassured them that he was up to date on all of his shots and could show his records if needed. I saw entitled person a few days later, and his hand was a gauze-wrapped mess. I asked him how he was doing and asked him what on earth possessed him to come to my house after dark when I have all the signs up warning of an aggressive dog and not to trespass. Entitled person: well, I wanted to talk to your son about his truck. I've been to your house with your brother. Kaiser liked me, okay? I thought it would be okay. I tried to open your gate, but it was locked. So I reached inside to see if I could unlock it, and Kaiser came out of nowhere and bit me. He said he never heard Kaiser and never saw him. He just felt the bite. I don't know if he is an entitled person for assuming he did not have to follow our clear warning signs that have been on our fence for 10 years that he sees every time he drives past our house, or if he is just a stupid person. My dog was doing his job, protecting his family. Keep in mind, this man is drunk by 10 a.m. I don't believe I've ever seen him sober. Nothing more came of this situation. Entitled person stayed clear of us after that. He did eventually buy my son's truck, but his check bounced, so we took it back. The guy really is an idiot. Rest in peace, Kaiser, you brave, precious, loving, protective beast of a dog. You saved us so many times. Thank you for reading. Unfortunately, this kind of thing happens all the time. People assume that they're going to be safe around an animal, and they end up getting hurt. This is why Mr. Reddit says to never pet an animal without its owner's permission, and stay out of people's yards as well. Have you ever had a bad experience with someone's pet? If so, please let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from you. New owner wants us to carry garbage bags through a crowded restaurant. Okay, you're the boss. This is another story about my bartending days, and I'll preface by saying, even though it got my point across, not then, nor do I now feel good about what happened here. So, slight backstory. I was working as a bar manager in a student pub. The new owner and I hated each other. It was actually scary just how deep that hatred ran. However, I was his fastest bartender and simply too popular among the other employees to just fire. So instead, he would always belittle me in front of clients or other staff members and find ways to make my job more insufferable. I'm guessing in hopes that I would simply quit. So the bar was at the front of the store. The exit was right by the front entrance, which led through a caged-off alley, which led to the alley where we dumped all the garbage from the bar and restaurant. We had always carried the garbage out that way. It was easy, effective, and we didn't have to walk through the restaurant carrying garbage bags. So obviously, the new owner made the rational decision to start locking that way off and forbidding us from using it. This meant we now had to walk through the restaurant where people were eating, up a mini stairwell, and through the kitchen. I don't even know how many health and safety regulations this was violating. I had protested this at several staff meetings, explaining to him that us not being allowed to go that way doubled the trip, which left the bar a man short for double the time. It was also double the time for the bags to tear, considering they were usually filled with heavy and sometimes broken bottles, and mostly it was just unsanitary walking through the restaurant and kitchen with bags that were usually dripping fluids. So obviously, he refused and said we will continue doing it his way. Cut forward a few nights later, and the place was packed, likely to overcapacity. But for in case it wasn't clear, safety concerns weren't much of a priority for this jerk. I should also point out that the bar only had one garbage bin, which had filled up several beer bottles ago. The other bartenders had been ignoring it because if you're carrying out garbage bags, then you're not serving customers, and if you're not serving customers, you're not making tips. So I decided to take this task upon myself and to venture out of the bar. I felt like Frodo carrying the ring to Mordor. As I mentioned, the bag was already over its recommended weight capacity, so I had to get through this crowd fast because I could feel it was going to tear quickly. Some of the glass had broken into the bag too, and had started cutting into me as I tried carrying the bag from the bottom to keep it from tearing open, all the while fighting my way through a crowd of drunk students. I finally made it to the mini stairwell by the kitchen, where the drunk owner and a random drunk girl were sitting on the stairs. The bag was now super close to tearing, and my hands had been cut by the glass. I tried getting the stupid boss's attention, begging him to move so I could get past. The boss ignored me. I'll say that the first time it was entirely possible that he may not have heard me over the crowd and the loud music, so I tried again. This time he looked straight at me and then continued to ignore me anyway. Cue the malicious compliance as I lifted the bag right over him and the girl, just for it to tear open right above them and everything inside poured out onto them. I felt bad for the girl. She had not deserved this. As for the owner, forget him. The kitchen staff had heard the crash and screams and ran out to clean the mess. I tried helping, but they told me to go back to the bar. A few seconds later, the owner came storming into the bar, screaming at me and asking me what possessed me to try and lift a garbage bag over the head of him and a customer. I innocently said that I wouldn't have had to do so if he had just let me through the alley. The owner gave me the biggest death glare I had ever gotten, then took the alley key off of his keyring, threw it at me, and stormed out of the bar. So even though I had been forced to cover a girl in glass to get my point across, I still walked out of this battle victorious. Just to add, this happened back in 2008, and I haven't bartended since 2009. I just enjoy recalling these stories because of how absurd that place was. But unfortunately, I won't be able to use any of the advice anymore on how I could rectify this. For those of you upset about me endangering her, I agree. I think I literally said that in the first sentence of this story that I felt bad about it, and I still do to this day. But she wasn't injured. Neither was my stupid boss, unfortunately. And this was 12 years ago. I was a teenager, and we all did things as teenagers that we weren't proud of. I'm gonna give you a list of why I say this was the worst boss I ever had, and why I later just really stopped caring and became the kind of employee that nightmares are made of. He would constantly forget my name, even though we shared the same first name. Although I was the bar manager, he would give his girlfriend and friends shifts above me and pay them higher wages. In our first December, he had put himself on managing shift and put me on as a waiter/barman. He would show up and say, "You can see I was here," then leave me alone to run the place for 18 hours, but refused to pay me manager wages because he had to come in. I had an accident, not at work, where I cut off a piece of my toe. This had, temporarily, halted my bartending career as I was on crutches. About a week later, the boss begged me to come manage the shop for him, promising I wouldn't have to do anything else other than office work. This was the night before the university reopened, and he had only put one waiter and barman on shift. I ended up having to waiter on crutches while the boss rejected all my phone calls. He showed up 3 hours later, drunk, and berated me for the fact that the shop wasn't under control. He took all the waiters and bartenders to a music festival, leaving me behind to run the shop alone, never taking into account that the festival was ending that day, so all the students were returning and we had an all-you-can-eat pizza special running. I'll let you use your imagination on that one. After a massive party the night before, he told all the cleaners they could take the morning off and left me alone on shift to get the entire place cleaned up between 9 and 11. The place was wrecked. When I didn't finish in time, he yelled at me, stormed out of the shop, and didn't return again for the rest of the day. Have you ever dealt with a horrible boss? Sometimes people in positions of power have a lot of problems going on in their lives, and they can take it out on their employees, which is not fair to the employee whatsoever. Please let me know if you've ever had any experiences like this in the comments below. Update. My sister thinks $55 covers 2 months of babysitting. I spoke first to brother-in-law, who had no idea that she wasn't paying me, so he was the one to pay me back for the weeks I had already done. He wasn't very happy with my sister. I didn't watch them for this last week. I did talk to my sister first off about how disrespectful that was to make a deal and then go back on that deal, especially considering how ill-behaved her kids are. My sister told me that she didn't think it was a big deal because I was getting unemployment, and she assumed that because some people were getting unemployment and an additional $600 a week, that it didn't make any sense to pay extra to people on unemployment and not those working. So I was making bank either way. She assumed wrong. I was not getting $600 extra a week. I wasn't on unemployment, but it was a part of what happened with my former employer before I went to work for myself, that they're paying for my unemployment for their many labor law violations. My unemployment through them is almost up anyways. Either way, it was odd for her to assume I was making $900 a week off unemployment without asking me if I was. She and her brother-in-law had to switch around their shifts to watch their kids this week since I wouldn't show up. Brother-in-law said he'd pay me directly if she wasn't going to, and that's when it became a three-way conversation. I let them know that their kids' behavior is really unacceptable, even for behaviorally challenged kids, which if they were, they'd be forced to have a child care provider licensed for dealing with it. That's not the case with their kids. They just let them get away with too much. Ironically, last week I saw a hot bench episode with a mother who had a kid who apparently told the babysitter to put him in his room, put up the gate if she were to not be in the room with him for any reason so he couldn't get out. And this kid was 10, and it got me thinking of my nephews. So I told them they need to install more security measures against the kids. A high-raised lock that the monkey can't reach, so he can't be running out the door. Removing anything that can be used as a weapon. Possibly a gate to lock one up in the room if they're misbehaving where there's nothing in there for them to break. I'm not watching them this week either, but I told them I might reconsider if something can be done to make watching them not like being a security guard at a prison. My sister didn't like my suggesting that they need to change their parenting, but my brother-in-law actually agreed. They had their argument, and he said this is why they can't get a babysitter or daycare for them anymore. They're out of control. Definitely knew that. And that they just keep coddling them through it. Definitely knew my sister was doing that. So there's a possibility I might watch them next week, if they have some sort of way to mitigate their behaviors that could actually work. But that's not a yes yet. They would need these ways to start disciplining their kids either way, or they'll just be releasing awful teens into the world. What would you do if you were in this situation? Would you continue babysitting these kids even though they're so difficult to deal with? How about if you were the parents? Situations like this can take a real toll on everyone in the family. Sweet revenge on my landlord. I live in an expensive part of the United States. To live in a 500 square foot cottage, it cost me $2,100. Upon moving in, the 70-year-old landlady gave me the impression that the space would be a private sanctuary. She failed to mention that from the moment I moved in, she would start doing loud, invasive, and extensive work on my property. To give you a little idea of the space, there's a 3-bedroom house next door, and then there's my place, a separate unit with its own yard. Attached is yet another unit that has been under construction. The landlady told me she planned on building a dance studio. She failed to mention that she would be building this when I signed the lease. Originally, the space was a 2-bedroom, but she built a closet separating the unit and turned it into a small 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom with a tiny kitchen with a living space. It's expensive, but hey, it's by the beach, secluded, and I thought I would have privacy. Boy, was I wrong. The landlady and her workers are here every single day from 1 p.m. to 8 p.m., sometimes later, just generally when it gets dark outside. She has an unlicensed contractor working from 3 to 8 p.m. because that's the only time I can get him since he has a day job. They are cutting stones, doing all kinds of landscaping, redoing different structural parts of the house, so loud hammering. But worst of all, the landlady is just always there. It felt like she was constantly watching me. I can't keep my windows open because there's someone always there. The last thing I want when I come home at 5 p.m. after a long day of work is to hear loud noises, let alone my landlady. I put up with this crap because I didn't want to create conflict, but then she left an eviction notice in my mailbox informing me that she smelled Mary Jane and that I had to move out within 30 days. Despite me being frustrated with the situation, I am very busy with work and didn't want to deal with finding a new place. I just moved in 4 months prior, and it's a pain in the butt to find a place to live in this town. Luckily for me, she didn't realize that a just cause eviction law had recently passed in the city. I wrote her a lengthy letter informing her that she doesn't have grounds kicking me out based on a smell and must pay me to move out. Here is the revenge. I went down to the city and informed them that I have a hunch she had illegally turned her unit into a duplex. They came to my place the next day. I let them inspect my residence and showed them the work she had been doing in the unit connected to mine. They said they would look into it. I got a response from her lawyer letting me know that she was in fact wrong and can't kick me out. She told my wife that she thinks I'm evil and that she had to go to therapy because of my letter. She also told her that the house got red tagged because I reported her to the city. So now she can't have a duplex anymore and is going to have to occupy the other half as a room. Say bye-bye to your plans on building a dance studio, jerk. She will also have to demolish all the work that she has already done because she didn't get permits. All because she was upset that she thought she smelled something in the house. I have never felt so good getting someone back using the city laws against them. Forget landlords that try and jip people out of a home because they are control freaks. I definitely taught her a lesson and am moving out at the end of the month because I don't want to live here anymore. What would you do if you were in this situation? You decide to rent this new place and it's basically your dream home. All of a sudden you've got so much noise outside, day in and day out, because the landlady's having all kinds of construction done. Do you think OP went overboard by going and getting the city involved? Let me know in the comments below. Clean up the trash. A few things first. I grew up around snakes. I've owned a few different breeds. I know how to handle snakes. I also know what breeds of snakes live in my area. Our cast. We've got me, we've got Karen, and we've got the kid. I was out at a park where the trail went around the lake, and the section of the trail I was walking on was about 10 feet wide. There was grass a little higher than my ankles and a few bush-like trees that grew over the water. This is important. I was looking around one of the trees when I hear someone clear their throat. I didn't think anything of it because allergies are super common this time of year. Karen. Excuse me? I look over and she's doing one of those bent-over waves at me. Karen. Yeah, hi, excuse me. Me. Hi. I'm confused as to why she needs my attention. There is garbage all over the park. I'm trying to have a nice day out. Me. Yeah, I know, it sucks. I'm trying to have a nice day too. I'm dumber than a box of rocks, so I didn't understand why she was telling me, but I understand not wanting litter all over the park. Karen. So clean it up. Me. What? Clean it up. I was getting kind of upset because she was talking to me like I was stupid, not like a normal person. Me. Do it yourself, lady. What did you say to me? You heard me. But it's your job. At this point, I realized what was going on, so I just chuckled to myself. I turned back around to continue looking for snakes. She starts yelling at me, and because I have 3 younger siblings, I tune her out. It also helps I have a CAPD. I can hear some of it, however, and she was saying I was disrespectful, something about her son, and then starts yelling at me. Just as I'm about to move to the next spot, I see a black rat snake. I grab it and quickly stand up. It was about 2.5 to 3 feet long. Black rat snakes can grow up to 6 feet long. Karen had a delayed reaction. Maybe she thought it was a stick. It was like something out of a movie. She went from enraged to terrified. She started backing away, dragging her son with her. You're not very ladylike. Then the wild Karen fled back to her hovel. I wasn't trying to scare Karen on purpose. I just found what I was looking for. You should never purposely scare someone with any animal because the animal could get hurt. I think we've discovered it, the secret weapon to stop the Karens. Snakes. On a side note, are you afraid of snakes or do you think they're really cool? Please let me know. Karen tries to eat my friend's birthday cake. We've got me, we've got Karen, we've got Karen's brat, we've got my boyfriend, we've got friend who's having the birthday, friend 1, we've got random guy, we've got craft shop owner. So my friend's birthday is coming up, and I actually have a big friend group, so we decided to have friend 1's birthday party at a craft shop in the mall, then have a girls' night at my house since my older brother was away at college, so I had a spare room. Anyways, after school, my boyfriend and I go to the shop and make sure everything is set up. Since the shop does parties in a little room in the back, there's a window next to the birthday party door where you can kind of see in and watch what's happening, but it's really fuzzy through the window. The cake was in the fridge, our food was all ready, the crafts were out and ready, etc. So I call my friends over to bring friend 1 to the shop. So my friends say that I want her to come to the shop, etc., etc., so she comes. Everything's normal. We surprise her, do some crafts, eat food, and then finally it's cake time. Since I didn't have time to make it during the day, we bought it, and it cost a lot more than normal because we had it specially made. But it's 3-tiered with images of SpongeBob. Why not? And also pictures of my whole friend group. You can have edible pictures. We cut into the cake and start slicing it. It's a really big cake, but we're a really big group, and so there actually won't be any left over. The shop owner is helping random guy find some stuff. Then we hear a knock on the door. I think it's shop owner, so I open it. It's entitled Mom. She has the complete Karen look, and my friends are all watching her behind me. Excuse me, can I help you? I ask.
Yes, my son is hungry, and I happened to see you had a large cake. I would like a slice.
Oh no, I think. Here comes trouble. I'm sorry, but this is my friend's surprise party, and the cake is for us. There's a food court. We were in a mall, right next to this shop. Maybe you should get some food there. Entitled Mom didn't give up, and her son comes out behind her. I'm hungry, he moans. My friends and I are trying not to laugh. Her son looks 17 to 18 years old.
Listen here, girl. My son wants that cake, and I can't afford food right now. Would you let my son starve?
Now I'm getting mad. No, you listen here, Karen. I don't know you, and I have no obligation to give you food I bought with my own money. I'm sorry you're too lazy to get a job, but it isn't my problem. Go yell all you want, but yelling won't buy you more brain cells. Entitled Mom is mad, but then she stops.
Wait, how did you know my name is Karen?
My friends and I are cracking up now.
You little jerks! How dare you laugh?
Her yelling caught the attention of the shop owner and random guy. Please get out of my shop right now. The shop owner isn't joking around. You have no right to talk to these girls like that. Random guy didn't see my boyfriend, but my boyfriend was the only guy there. And you have every right to listen to the shop owner. Get out. Random guy is staring daggers at Entitled Mom, so she yells some more and drags her adult son out of the shop. Never feel like you have to share your birthday cake with Karen because you don't. Entitled brother gets me evicted. Or wannabe gangstar continues to be a dumb donkey and gets put down. Hello once again, Re-Army. It's been 2 months since my last post, and it's a sort of continuation from that tale. As in, it's another story involving Chris, my entitled brother. I'll post a link to it at the end of the story, but it's not really important. What you need to know is Chris is my entitled sibling who sells sandwiches. If you've watched How I Met Your Mother, you'll understand. And if you don't, enjoy laughing and putting the pieces together. We've also got Miss L, my mother, a saint. And we've got me, side character in my own story. We've also got Tim and Brian, my little brothers, background characters. Now, Chris up there has done a lot of things since my last tale, but none of them were good enough for a proper entitled story. He's had his son over for the summer to dump him on other people cause he needed a break. Cause, as you know, being a parent is a punch clock job, like construction work or any office job. Don't worry, he's back in Chicago with his mom. He's not harmed in this story. Constantly invited random people over at all hours of the night, none of which we knew. And even when he wasn't around, people kept coming and asking for him. And nobody wanted him about. Got cops to investigate the premises for bad things he was doing. And he ate every scrap of food in the house, not even leaving a crumb for the mice that we, thankfully, didn't have in our hotel. Now, none of these are big enough for a proper story of their own, even combined. They all came and went the same way. Chris acts like a jack-a-mule, gets mom angry, she turns the other cheek and warns him to stop, and he stops and promises to learn his lesson. Then the next episode airs, and it happens all over again. With the set stage, the actual story. It was a late night when I got up and headed to the bathroom. I noticed Chris wasn't in his usual spot, but I didn't remember seeing him walk about, and by now, it was 4 in the morning. So I figured he was in the bathroom. But I needed to go, so I dragged myself to the bathroom and went to knock. The door flew open, and my eyes nearly bugged open when I saw Chris walk out. He was mumbling under his breath and made way for me to go in. There were sandwiches everywhere. The sink was stuffed with them, the floor painted with pieces, and he reeked of the stuff. Chris.
Can you hurry it up, Black? I'm busy. This is my secret laboratory.
More like laboratory. No response. He would at least sneer or laugh, but he was so stuffed that he didn't seem all there. I rolled my eyes, used the bathroom, and washed my hands in the shower. Once he went in and shut the door, I looked closer at the floor and saw a trail of sandwich material. Wherever he went, a mess had followed him. I was tired and didn't feel like picking a fight, so I just made my way to the bed and tried to get some sleep. But I was roused by the sound of my mom waking and trying to use the bathroom. I didn't hear much as I was drifting in and out of sleep, but she was let in, came out, and made her way back to her bed to get more sleep before she had to hurry for work. But before she drifted back to sleep, Mom, "This is the last straw, Chris. I'm not dealing with this anymore."
Ma, come on.
"No, I mean it. I want you and your sandwiches out by the time I get back from work." Chris then, from my perspective, was incoherent slurring, but my mom later told me, he said,
Man, I don't care. I don't care about anything. I'm out on the grind, making my money.
"Yes, that's why you're always broke." Mom,
Yeah? Well, you can make it somewhere else, 'cause you can't stay here anymore.
Chris. Chris then collected his stuff and shuffled out the door, even slamming it. But I didn't care, and neither did my mother. We just went on about our day. And what a day it was, without hearing Chris screech on his phone or without catching him going through someone's stuff. My mom soon came home, happy to see Chris gone, and even gave me the words I always wanted to hear.
If he comes back, do not let him in.
I was so happy I could cry. Then there was a knock on the door. Oh, dang it all. I knew something was wrong. My little brothers knew it too. And when the door opened, a man had handed us a note, had a chat outside, and then she came back inside. Mom,
Apparently, your brother was arrested. He was hanging around with his backpack open, and they caught him with tons of sandwiches, as well as other things he shouldn't have had.
now my brother already had a warrant for his arrest, so that's a potential 5 years. I was smiling like a madman.
And apparently, he told them that he stayed in our room.
My smile went a full 360, and it was clear to all of us that we were getting evicted. Immediately. We either had to be gone by tonight, or they had called the cops to escort us out. We had to pick up our belongings, a lot of them, and had to get moving. We were all thinking and saying the same thing. Chris was a good for nothing. It didn't help that we kept finding sandwiches around the place and had to dispose of them so we didn't leave any of his trays. Mom,
This is exactly why I didn't want him around. Because I knew he would do this. See this? If the cops came and kicked the door in, we'd all be lunch meat.
I'm typing all of this from my aunt's house. My mom is planning to not stay for long. I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't still taking this as a blessing. Yeah, we all nearly got arrested. And yes, we're back to square one because of Chris. But he's gone now, for at least 10 years. And it seems my mother finally understands that he's a leech and has no intentions of changing. The entitled family who ruined our class trip, and the Karen who stood up for me. Hey Mr. Reddit and the Re-Army. This is my very first post, but only the first of quite a few, because I've known a few entitled people in my life. My first language is English, and I like to think I can write pretty well, but roast me if my grammar or spelling is wrong. Also on mobile, yada yada. This is a long one, so buckle up for a wild ride. Our cast. We've got me. We've got Mrs. Huckleberry, our entitled mom in this story. The family was dubbed the Huckleberries because they were hillbillies. We've got entitled kid, the entitled brat girl, Mrs. Huckleberry's precious baby. We've got Huckleberry girl, the oldest daughter in my class that was Mrs. Huckleberry's stepdaughter. We've got art teacher, my awesome high school art teacher I'm still friends with to this day. And we've got Huckleberry grandma, Mrs. Huckleberry's mother, who for some reason joined us on the trip. We've got the chaperones, not all that involved, but still relevant. We've got Karen, It wouldn't be an entitled parent story without her, but don't be fooled. This is a unique Karen that only appears once every 10,000 Karens. The story. This happened about 4 years ago when I was still in high school, so it's not word for word anymore. I listen to Mr. Reddit every day, and it encouraged me to join Reddit because boy do I have quite a few stories about entitled people. My first encounter with an entitled mom and her bratty kid was on our international school trip to England and France. A bit of info about this family. Their eldest daughter was in my class. We were seniors at the time, so we were around 17 to 18 years old. The entitled mom was her stepmom, who treated her very poorly, such as giving her a crappy old phone while she brought her 12-year-old bratty daughter the newest iPhone. I didn't feel too bad for the older girl though. Let's call her Huckleberry Girl. She constantly lied about stuff. The little brat, let's call her the standard entitled kid, would constantly wander into our hallway, it was K-12 private school, and steal stuff from other students, giggling and running down the hall, waving it in the air, making them chase her down and cause them to be late to class. This happened to me quite often. The family ran this homemade jelly business, and being totally honest, their jelly and jam was actually pretty good. But I'd never pay for it, as I don't want to give these awful people business. The people on the trip had a code name for this family, known as the Huckleberries, since they were hillbillies who ran a very unclean little farm in the woods on the same street as my house. We spent the entire first half of the school year selling these people's jelly at farmers markets with the promise of them paying us to raise money for our trip. I got stung by plenty of bees and wasps that were attracted to the samples and got a lot less money than was expected. Come to find out, we were really funding their own family to go on the trip, since they took most of our promised pay for themselves. We didn't find this out until later. My mom even went to help out, and they said they'd pay her, and then refused to pay her at all after the fact and denied they said they would. Sorry for the long backstory. Anyway, we were about to go on the annual international school trip. Only 9th through 12th graders were allowed, and since it was my final year of school, I waited and decided to go my last year to countries I had always wanted to go. I was so excited to go to London and Paris. It was about a week before we left when we found out nearly the entire Huckleberry family were going. Mrs. Huckleberry, Huckleberry Girl, bratty little entitled kid who had canceled her own class trip to go on ours instead, even though she wasn't supposed to since she was only a 6th grader, and their grandma for some reason. Mrs. Huckleberry was this shortish but massive ball of morbidly obese lady who looked to be in her early 50s, who always had this snooty look like she was better than everyone. Yet the family appeared quite poor and lived in such filthy conditions. She came waddling into the school's office demanding to speak to the trip coordinator, our art teacher, who me and my friends were pretty close with. Our art teacher told us about the interaction. Mrs. Huckleberry:
We all signed up for this trip, and we don't want to go to Paris. We want to go to Stonehenge instead. My little entitled kid has always wanted to see Stonehenge. Nobody wants to go to Paris anyway. Just cancel it and replace it with Stonehenge.
My art teacher: Actually, most of the group does want to go to Paris. We'll be traveling with a group from another school who are going on the exact same itinerary. We can't just change it, as Stonehenge isn't on the itinerary at all. And besides, entitled kid isn't even supposed to be going on this trip. She'll have plenty of chances to see Stonehenge on future trips when she's in high school. But Mrs. Huckleberry wasn't having any of it. That's all I remember. But all of us going on the trip were infuriated to learn Mrs. Huckleberry had gone higher up and demanded they cancel Paris because her family didn't want to go, and they were paying group members and had Stonehenge added instead. The rest of the group was so angry, the art teacher cried because she had always wanted to go to Paris, and this swine of a lady had decided to turn this school trip into her family vacation, funded by students who had been informed they would be receiving most of the pay from the jelly sales. So the trip finally came. The Huckleberries were a problem from the beginning. First, entitled kid demanded a window seat, which she didn't get because she didn't specifically ask for one. So Mrs. Huckleberry waddled around, demanding other students to give over their window seat tickets. A nicer guy in the group caved and gave entitled kid the ticket. The entire 8-hour flight from Atlanta to London, Mrs. Huckleberry was telling other passengers about their jelly business and that they sold their famous jelly to the Ritz Hotel. It was locally famous, but not anything more. Whether they actually sold it to the Ritz is unknown, but I doubt a famous fancy hotel would hire these dirty people who ran a filthy, unkempt farm to sell internationally to them. Their property looked like something you'd see on a hoarder show, complete with like 15 cats. Anyway, our first night we spent in an airport-side hotel in London, and of course, most of the group went to play in the indoor pool area. My first encounter with Mrs. Huckleberry. I had just gotten out of the pool and was drying off, my phone to the side on the chair behind me. Suddenly, entitled kid splashes me. A bit frustrated, I say, "Hey, I'm drying off. Can you not splash me?" Entitled kid just giggles and splashes me more. Water flies all over me and on my phone. "Hey, I said cut it out. My phone screen is cracked and I don't want water getting into the cracks." I turn to look at Mrs. Huckleberry, who is laughing with entitled kid and taps her nose like she's tapping the nose of a whiny infant. "No, no," Mrs. Huckleberry says in a sickly, playful tone. Entitled kid giggles more as her nose is poked. I'm annoyed. I grab my phone and leave, still dripping wet as is my towel. Later in France, I had to spend the entire day in a village I wanted to explore watching these people's grandma because Mrs. Huckleberry had taken her 2 daughters and abandoned the old woman who was easily lost. So me, feeling bad for her because she wasn't nearly as bad as the others, decided to stay with her and guide her around town since everyone else had already left. The poor old woman looked so lost, I couldn't just leave her there. She really appreciated this and even told Mrs. Huckleberry about how I had helped her and spent the whole day showing her around town. Meanwhile, she had been busy spending over €100 in a single tourist store because she bought entitled kid literally everything she wanted because nothing was too good for her angel. And if she wanted it, she'd get it. This happened frequently in a lot of the souvenir shops. Entitled kid would see a ton of stuff and would rush her mom in to buy it all. But of course, Mrs. Huckleberry didn't buy her stepdaughter, Huckleberry Girl, a single thing. But that's not the end, not even close. We spent the next day exploring the D-Day beaches of Normandy. We had all gotten back on the bus to head back to the hotel for dinner when all of a sudden entitled kid cries out, "Where's my phone?" Mrs. Huckleberry tosses stuff around in the seats as they were quite messy and left their trash everywhere. Even the bus driver called them filthy pigs for this, and Mrs. Huckleberry said in her loud, booming voice,
"Who took my daughter's phone? Speak up."
Our tour guide, "We can't stay behind and look for it. We'll be late for dinner."
"No, we are not leaving until it's found. Get the students to help us look for it. It has her credit cards and ID in its case."
Why a 12-year-old had her own credit card and ID, I don't know. She was just spoiled like that. By this time it began to hail, but this massive jerk was not going to let us go until her brat's phone was found. 2 boys, one of the ones being the boy who had given entitled kid his window seat ticket, got off and ran into the hail to try and see if she had dropped it anywhere nearby, but entitled kid herself didn't get off to help. Oh no, she was not going to go out in the hail. In the end, the phone was never found, and after an hour and a half of these boys out in the hail searching for it, but it was all topped off by Mrs. Huckleberry saying, "Don't worry, sweetie, I'll just buy you the newest iPhone when we get back." We were late to dinner, of course, and our tour guide was beginning to hate our group and favored the other school group. Why wouldn't he with people like this in our group? We returned to England the following day on a ferry. We went to their beloved Stonehenge, and they got super angry because the stones were roped off and untouchable. All the students were ill, and it was freezing and windy. So we were forced to get out in the rain for these people who canceled our entire 3-day Paris trip while the other school group had gone to Paris without us, and we rode all the way back to England just for them to still not be satisfied. They complained for the rest of the day, of course. Even the grandma was showing her true colors, complaining and whining about how she came all this way and spent so much money to not be able to see the great stones up close. But remember, this old woman didn't lift a single finger to fund herself. We paid for her to go with the stolen jelly sales money. This was it, the final straw, the grand finale. We were in London on the last few days of the trip, walking around the city. We had just left the hotel. I kept a small zipped bag on my back with things like my wallet and phone in it, and a few other small things and valuables. Mrs. Huckleberry and her goblin entitled kid were walking behind me. I didn't think anything of it, when all of a sudden, I feel the bag on my back being tugged. I turn around and see this brat unzipping the bag and start taking my wallet. Me, Stop it! I had enough of her nonsense over the year. Despite being pretty frustrated, I turned away and kept walking without another word, snatching my wallet from her and zipping it back into my bag. Then I hear her, the bellow of the entitled swine.
How dare you!
I stop walking and turn to face this massive behemoth. I'm a tiny 5-foot girl, so I have nothing on her. Me. What? She was taking my stuff. Why didn't you do anything? Mrs. Huckleberry.
She was just playing. Don't you ever touch my kid. What a rude and horrible girl you are. I'll tell the other staff what you did. How dare you tell her she can't be playful? She's a kid.
Yeah, a spoiled, entitled brat kid that isn't supposed to be here, I think to myself. I ignore her from then on and keep walking. I'm pretty angry now. We catch up to the rest of the group, where Mrs. Huckleberry immediately pulls the tour guide and chaperones aside and starts going off at them.
That awful girl called my precious baby a jerk. She stole entitled kid's wallet and harassed me. She's been harassing us this entire trip. Do something about this and send her home so she doesn't ruin the trip for the rest of us.
For context, I'm a quiet, reserved person. While yes, I did think they were both jerks, I didn't say it to their face. These chaperones had known me my whole life, and they knew this family had been a nuisance to everyone on the trip. They cut her off and turned to me. Chaperone. Did you call entitled kid a jerk? Me. Of course not. Entitled kid came up behind me and opened my bag and was trying to take my stuff. All I said was for her to stop. And then Mrs. Huckleberry started yelling at me and accusing me of things. They believed me, but I was already in tears. This family had single-handedly ruined the trip for everyone. What I listed wasn't even everything they did. I just don't want to prolong this more than I already have. The rest of the trip was angry death glares and muttering at me. The trip ended, and afterwards Mrs. Huckleberry went straight back to the office and gave them an earful about me. But the lady she spoke to had also known me since I was little and backed me up. And who was she other than a Karen? Yes, her name was actually Karen. Karen told her she was disgraceful and an embarrassment to the school, and that she was an awful person for taking the student sales money for herself and for treating me poorly, and that it was our class trip, not her family vacation. That's what I heard was said anyway. See, it may be rare, but not every Karen in the world is entitled. I just know Mrs. Huckleberry hastily removed entitled kid the following year and put her in a rival school, and they weren't seen again. I went back to the school often since my mom worked there as a teacher's aide. The next year, I would see kids in the grade behind me that had also gone on the trip, talking about how awful the Huckleberries were, and that they couldn't believe the way Mrs. Huckleberry acted and how she had canceled Paris and made the trip all about her and entitled kid. Still, I do miss the free jelly Huckleberry girl would bring. Funny enough, I moved to the UK and now live 20 minutes from Stonehenge with my husband and new son, and I can see it anytime I want. So Karen, what do you think of Mrs. Huckleberry?
I don't see what she did wrong. It's not every day you get to go on a trip like that, and she had every right to make it as good as she could for her family.
But what about all the other students? I mean, this was supposed to be a student trip.
What about them? They need to stop complaining and start thinking about someone other than themselves.
And Mrs. Huckleberry shouldn't?
She did nothing wrong. Actually, I'd like to have a girls' night out with her. She sounds like my kind of girl.
Karen, you're sick. AT&T tries to scam me for $139. I reverse it and get $72,000. After my wife and I got married last year, we decided that we should both get on the same phone plan. We went down to the AT&T store and met with a rep who told us we'd both be on an unlimited plan for $70 a month, all in, including taxes and fees. I was very specific about getting the all-in price for the service. It seemed like a decent deal, so we signed up. 2 days later, I log into the website and see there's already a bill for $139. I call up a rep to see what's up, and they tell me that between the activation fees, taxes, and surcharges, the bill was correct. I told them what the salesperson told me, and they basically told me to pound sand. I promptly told them I wanted to cancel the service and wanted the $139 waived. They said they could cancel the service, but could not/would not waive the bill. They also told me if I canceled immediately, my wife and I would lose our phone numbers, which is true. So I figure since I already have to pay for the month and I don't want to lose my phone number, I will just get a new carrier and cancel when I'm ready. So I do my research and find Visible, which is excellent, and we make the switch. I call back to AT&T and inform them that we have switched carriers and want to cancel the service. I ask again for a refund. The rep informs me that since I have had the service for 4 days, that I am not entitled to a refund. He tells me to read the fine print on the contract, which indeed tells me that I have 3 days to cancel for a full refund. I'm now fuming because the first CSR that I talked to on day 2 denied me a refund if I canceled. I asked the next level of CSR and they send me to a customer care and retention person. I explained the entire fiasco to him and how I feel that I've been lied to twice by AT&T reps, sales rep and first CSR. He's a really cool guy and apologizes and says he'll take care of it and will completely waive the bill. I'm very thankful and hang up, thinking that this is finally resolved. Fast forward a month and I get an AT&T bill in the mail saying my payment was not received and is now late. I again pick up the phone and call AT&T. I eventually make my way through 2 CSR reps until I get back to the customer care and retention department. This time I did not have the chill dude. Instead, I got a very smarmy lady who said that the bill was due and I'd owe the entire amount. I asked her to please check the CSR notes and that the last guy told me that he would waive the amount. She put me on a 10-minute silent hold and came back and said she'd escalate the matter to her supervisor. She said I should receive an email by the end of the week with a resolution. 2 weeks go by, no response. I call again. This time I get a very nice lady that is sympathetic. She says she'll waive the bill. She comes back and tells me that she can't do anything because the bill has already been sent to collections. She said not to worry and that she'll send a letter to collections and have them waive the debt. I ask if this will go on my credit report and she says no and that they'll take care of it. 6 months later, I get a letter in the mail from Sequim Asset Solutions out of Georgia trying to collect the $139. I immediately send them a letter via certified mail demanding that they verify the debt since it's obviously bad. I hear nothing for 2 months and then I get an alert that I have a negative mark on my credit. I go in and sure enough, Sequim has indicated that the amount is in collections. I immediately write letters to all 3 bureaus requesting that they remove the mark. A month goes by and every single one of the bureaus removes the mark, thank God. Another 3 months go by and then I get a letter from Sunrise Credit Services in New York, again trying to collect on the debt. This is truly unbelievable because it appears that Sequim couldn't verify it, so instead of apologizing and waiving the debt, they just sold it off to another collection agency. I send another certified letter to Sunrise demanding verification. I get nothing in reply. So far, they have not attempted to put a mark on my credit. That's where this part on my story ends. Who knows what will happen next? I could file a lawsuit, but the filing fee alone would be more than the amount owed. Here's the thing, I am not cash-strapped. I am blessed enough that I could easily pay the $139 without marking a dent in my budget. I have lost 5 times that amount in hours spent on the phone and writing letters, but I am determined to go to the mat with AT&T on principle alone. This brings us to the revenge stage. You see, in addition to my day job as an attorney, I am an elected city councilman in my town, and when I was going over our monthly expenses, I noticed that we were paying AT&T close to $6,000 a month for our phones, internet, and TV services. We're a fairly small town, so it was pretty obvious that we were being bent over by these clowns and that we could save a ton of money by switching. I started working with our city manager and IT director on finding other solutions. We discovered that by switching to various carriers and providers that we could save half. I never would have looked that closely into our telecom expense had AT&T not jerked me around. 2 weeks ago, the resolution to switch was put on our meeting agenda and the council voted to pass it. We decided to completely cut ties with AT&T. Our city is saving a ton of money, getting better service, and with the money we saved from switching, we were able to hire another part-time animal shelter employee, which we desperately needed. I highly doubt our city would have considered switching if I didn't make such a stink about it. AT&T will end up losing hundreds of thousands over the coming years because of this. I hope it was worth it, AT&T. Well, Karen, what'd you think of that one?
Ha! He should have spoken to the manager. I would have demanded the manager remove that bill immediately.
Well, the revenge that he got on AT&T was a lot more epic than just that one bill.
You don't know what you're talking about. When you have a problem with a stupid company like AT&T, all you need to do is speak to the manager.
Say bad things about me to the owner? I make your life heck for 18 months. Okay, people of Reddit, here's a story about a slacker getting what he deserves. My uncle told me a crazy story of how he made his coworker's life a living heck. Now, my uncle worked in real estate for most of his life. This story takes place in 1977. Meet everybody. We've got Uncle, we've got the slacker, we've got the nice coworker, and the manager. Okay, so at this time my uncle is working as a real estate agent in the LA County area in the state of California. He was working there for 10 years and was the lead agent, so he had a lot of responsibility. Now he told me that if he wanted to elevate his career further he could have, but he was happy where he was and often turned down management roles and was content where he was. Backstory. Uncle said that in June of that year a new hire came. We'll call him Slacker. Slacker put almost no effort into his job. He would be fine with selling a house here or there, but never put extra effort into his job. He did have prior experience, so this did help him get hired. My uncle, however, went above and beyond at his job. My uncle was the eternal bachelor type, so he was a workaholic. One day, the manager comes in and says that he's retiring. He said that there would be interviews next week to hire his replacement. Needless to say, people were talking among themselves. People wanted to see if they were going to apply for the job. Nice coworker. Hey, Uncle, are you gonna apply for the manager's job? Uncle. Nah, it's not really me. Nice coworker. Okay, that's kind of a relief. If I went against you, it would be tough. Slacker. Uncle, you better not apply for that manager job. It's mine. Uncle. I'm not though. I'm really happy in sales. So next week comes and the interviews happen and the slacker is made the new manager, much to everyone's displeasure. My uncle didn't think much of it and continued his work as usual. He got a call from the owner a few hours later. It was regarding him allegedly doing things that he never did, like forging reports, lying to clients, and representing the business badly. My uncle said that he has no idea about that and asks where he's getting the information from. He said that Slacker told him this. My uncle quickly dispelled that as he had witnesses and an alibi on his part. The owner investigated and later apologized for making assumptions without checking. Needless to say that my uncle was mad because Slacker threw him under the bus for no reason. Fast forward to 1978. Slacker almost has no responsibility and he doesn't do the paperwork or be a manager. Coworkers relied on my uncle to solve problems because the slacker was useless. 3 months into 1978, and the general manager announces that he's quitting to become an executive. He announces that he's going to hire his replacement and the interviews will be next week. Nice coworker applied and Slacker. Now, the final straw is when Slacker asked my uncle to fill out his general manager application for him. It goes, Slacker. Hey, I need you to fill out this application and have it to me in 3 days. Uncle. Sorry, I can't. I have a lot of work to do. Slacker. I'm your boss. Fill it out. He just slammed the papers on my uncle's desk. Uncle politely put the papers back in his office and said, You fill it out. Slacker. You're gonna regret this when I become general manager. After 10 months of dealing with this jerk, my uncle had had enough. So he threw his hat in and applied for the general manager's job. When nice coworker found out, he explained, I can't take it anymore. Because of my uncle's experience, he was given the job. It hurt Slacker. Cue the pro revenge. Within a week, my uncle demoted Slacker and made him an agent. He also gave nice coworker the manager's job. Slacker said, You can't do this. My uncle said, Yes, I can. Nice coworker gave Slacker all the homes that were harder to sell, which meant he was going to have to work hard in the field. Now, usually there's a good balance between good and bad homes, but Uncle gave Slacker the best of the worst. He said to my uncle, I can't sell my houses. Give me better ones, and the paperwork is too much. My uncle said, Figure it out. Fill it out. Fast forward to 1979. Slacker has the worst sales in the entire company. He even had to sell his car and get a cheaper one because of it. He also had to sell his house at a loss and move into a condo. Slacker asks for a raise and Uncle says, I'm your boss. Just do the paperwork. Slacker gets to a point where he is only living on his yearly salary, not commissions. My uncle said he was going to charge that jerk for his past labor plus interest. Fast forward to September of 1980. Slacker talked to the owner and said my uncle was being unfair to him. Uncle plays dumb and says, Mr. Owner, this isn't the case. I have given Slacker multiple properties and he isn't selling them. How can I be accountable for his shortcomings as a salesman? The owner agrees with my uncle and ignored the future pleas of Slacker as he had proof that he was offering him properties to sell. Slacker is defeated. He asks to be transferred to another office as he isn't making progress. He agrees, but doesn't give him a good reference. He was fired 2 months later for 3 weeks of unfinished paperwork. After my uncle defeated Slacker, he went back to his old job and gave the general manager's job to nice coworker. If you're wondering what happened to Slacker, he ended up getting a job selling tires by the I-5 freeway. My uncle didn't see much of him after that. Well, just goes to show you, always treat your coworkers with respect, along with the employees of any place you visit.
Respect. I'll respect you once I have a reason to.
Crazy idea here, Karen, but what if once you treat people right, they can become much more easier to work with?
What a stupid thing to say. I treat people like exactly what they are, beneath me.
Karen, you're a jerk. Don't believe me when I say there's a PayPal transaction fee? Enjoy paying it 3 times over. This one literally happened just minutes ago. I run a small online business, and sometimes the buyer doesn't have a bank account. I'm not one to turn down money from a willing buyer though, so for such people, I give them my bank account details and direct them to the nearest ATM and do a direct cash deposit into my bank account. Problem is, the smallest note the ATM will take is $10, so if the item costs $7, buyers who pay using such methods have no choice and must pay me $10 for a $7 item if they really want it that badly. I just take the extra $3 as an inconvenience fee for me. Along comes this dude. He requests to make a payment by ATM cash deposit, but wants me to refund the difference to him over PayPal. Okay, it's gonna be troublesome, but I never turn down a sale. So I accept, but inform him that PayPal will charge a small fee for any amount I refund him. He's insistent that it won't, as long as the money is tagged as family and friends. Except that feature doesn't exist in my country. PayPal is going to charge a 3.9% plus 50-cent fee for all transactions in my country, but this dude won't listen. We eventually come to the agreement that he will pay me over PayPal instead, but he will bear all PayPal fees. So the dude proceeds to send me money over PayPal, except he sends the exact cost of the item. As expected, PayPal took its cut, and now he's short a few dollars. So he has to send me another payment to make up for it, but PayPal took a cut of that too, and he comes up short 9 cents again. He's peeved now and sends me another 20 cents. PayPal took all of it. The fee is 3.9% plus 50 cents after all. All this happened in under a minute, and I almost spat out my coffee in laughter. At this point, I took pity on the poor sod and agreed that he didn't need to pay the 9 cents anymore. I'll absorb it, because he brightened up an otherwise monotonous morning. If this guy had done a normal ATM payment, the overpayment would have been about $3. If I refunded him that amount over PayPal, PayPal's fee would have just been 62 cents. But because this guy chose not to believe PayPal actually charges a fee for their services, he wound up paying PayPal about $7 in fees. Entitled mom calls the cops on me for picking up her daughter, who is my girlfriend and an adult. This happened about 5 years ago. My fiance and I have been together 7 years this month. We were hoping to get married this year, but might postpone due to the circumstances. We were reminiscing some old stories yesterday when this one came up, and she suggested I share it. She was my girlfriend at the time, and at the time I was fully aware that her mom was a few fries short of a Happy Meal. But this was the pinnacle of her behavior. If you guys enjoy this story, I actually have a few more I shall share if you like. We've got entitled mom, my future mother-in-law. We've got my girlfriend, Ellie. We've got the police officer, and we've got me. Ellie and I weren't living together at the time. She just stayed over from time to time when she could. I took her home after she had been staying with me a couple of days and was heading to work. But shortly after, just before getting to work, I get a phone call from her, and I can tell she is in tears. Apparently, when she got inside, entitled mom immediately blew up on her about being gone for so long, even though it was only 2 days. And she told entitled mom when she was going to be gone and kept in contact with her while she was. But Ellie just sort of brushed it off and went to her room. Entitled mom's house was pretty much your stereotypical crazy cat lady house. House badly decaying, cats all over the place, going to the bathroom in random places and whatnot. And when Ellie gets to her room, she realizes while she was gone, the cats went to the bathroom all over a pile of her clean clothes. But whatever, Ellie decided to just bag them up and she would wash them next time she came to my place. Her mom didn't have a functioning washer at the time, and apparently that really set Entitled Mom off. Entitled Mom apparently thought Ellie was bagging her clothes because she was planning to go back to my place that night to stay another few days. So she stomped into her room, grabbed the bag, ripped it open, and flung the clothes all over the room, along with all of the cat doo-doo, while screaming at Ellie that she's not going anywhere. That's when Ellie ran outside and called me. She was so upset and didn't know what to do. Her mom had been doing crazy stuff to Ellie since I had been with her, but up until I just helped her however I could while not getting involved and not saying a word to her mom. I told her to go ahead and get the things she needs and I'll take her to my place. She said she would love that. I told my work I was going to be late due to an emergency and turned around to go pick her up. When I pulled back up to the house, Ellie was in the driveway crying. I went and hugged her, told her it was going to be okay and that she could stay with me as long as she wanted. So she went back inside to get her things. As I was standing outside waiting, I heard the door open again and went to help Ellie with her things. Uh-oh, it's her mom. Entitled Mom comes stomping out with her hair crazy and frizzled and an old nightgown. She beelines for me and gets right in my face. Entitled Mom with an extremely thick, high-pitched southern accent.
My daughter said I need to come out here and ask what you think of me.
I knew that was a blatant lie, as Ellie would never instigate this.
You got something to say, huh? You think I'm trash, don't you, huh? That's what you think, isn't it?
Again, up until now, I'd completely kept my mouth shut and was trying to maintain that. But this lady was up in my face, freaking out, and was tormenting the woman I loved. So I finally looked at her and broke my silence. Me, why do you treat her like this? Entitled Mom.
What do you mean? That's my daughter, and I worship the ground she walks on.
Me. Oh, really? So calling her names is worship? Yes, I've heard her do this with my own ears.
I would never say anything like that.
Me, getting rather irate. BS, I've heard you say it. Entitled Mom explodes.
Get your butt off my property.
Okay, I almost never find myself in situations like this, so I'm not used to it. I say that because after she said this, I pretty much saw red. I'm not proud of it, but I just started shouting at her everything I could possibly think of at the top of my lungs while she went back in the house. But thankfully, that only lasted a few seconds and I immediately calmed down. So finally, Ellie comes back out with her stuff. We put it in the car and I assume it's over. But Ellie turns to me and says, "I'm sorry, but we can't leave yet." Me, why not? Mom called the cops. I sorta had a feeling that would happen. No big deal. So we just sat and waited for the cop to arrive. After about 10 minutes or so, a cop car pulls up. Right when he does, Entitled Mom comes out of the house, and oh my god. Yes, she was doing exactly what you think. She instantly puts on the fragile, brittle old lady act, hunched over, walking slowly, the whole gig. And of course, when police officer asks her what happened, she has to pitch her entire medical chart to the guy. Ellie will tell you this woman has been terminally ill for 12 years. So when she finally gets done trying to milk this poor guy for sympathy, she tells her version of what happened.
Sir, he came onto my property and verbally attacked me. He's awful to me, sir, and I've never even done anything to him. He's turned my daughter against me and is trying to convince her to leave.
At first, he seemed somewhat sympathetic to her, until he turns to Ellie. Officer, ma'am, this is your boyfriend? Ellie, yes, sir. Okay, and how old are you? Sir, I'm 23. This was my favorite part, because the officer looked up from his notepad with a look of, wait, what? Obviously, he was thinking Ellie was a minor or something based off of how Entitled Mom was acting, but quickly realized just what he was dealing with. Eventually, he turns to me. Okay, sir, please give me your version of what happened. I did so. Funny side note, at one point, officer looks up at me and says, "You look really familiar. Do I know you?" It actually turned out that the officer and I had gone to high school together. Once we recognized each other, we laughed and shook hands. This was hilarious, because out of the corner of my eye, I see Entitled Mom has a big scowl on her face as she sees me getting friendly with the officer.
But anyway, Officer puts his notepad away and turns to me. Just FYI, he says the following with this heavy tone of, I know that you are fully aware of this and don't believe you are in the wrong at all, but I have to say this as a formality. Officer: Well, OP, she doesn't want you on the property, so be aware that if you come back here, you technically can be charged with trespassing. Do you understand this as I've explained it? Me: Absolutely, sir. Entitled Mom:
But sir, I want to press charges.
Officer: He didn't do anything illegal, ma'am.
But he verbally assaulted me.
I understand that, and while that was ill-advised, he slightly turns to me and gives me a small gesture with his hand, and I nod in agreement. It's not something I could arrest him for. He agrees he will not come back on your property without your direct permission.
Okay, fine. Whatever. Ellie, come back inside.
Ellie: What? No.
You heard the officer. OP is leaving, and you're staying here.
Officer: Whoa, ma'am. I didn't say that at all.
But...
Your daughter is not a kid, ma'am. She is a full-grown adult. She has every right to do whatever she wants.
I'm her mother. She lives under my roof. I told her she needs to stay here, so she needs to stay.
No, ma'am. That's not how it works. If she wants to go stay with her boyfriend, there's absolutely nothing you can do to stop her. Entitled Mom starts the fake crocodile tears and stomps in the house in defeat. Ellie and I thanked the officer, got in the car, and left. We've been living together ever since. Believe it or not, Entitled Mom isn't really much of an entitled mom anymore. Over the years since that day, Entitled Mom has actually decided to make an effort to try and improve herself. I guess she realized that if she didn't make changes, she would lose her relationship with Ellie. So Entitled Mom started taking advantage of her medical coverage and went to see her psychiatrist and got medicine for mental illness she actually had, as opposed to the ones she would make up. Since then, well, she has actually gotten way better. She takes her medicine regularly and has a boyfriend that is an extremely kind man and treats Ellie as though she were his own daughter. So basically, Entitled Mom isn't really an entitled mom anymore. We actually get along very well, and we see them frequently, and we help each other out whenever we can. We actually look back on the early years when she was, in fact, an entitled mom and laugh. So not only is everybody getting along well, we can actually share the cringe stories and happily laugh about them. If you guys would like to hear some more, let me know. I think that's the most beautiful ending that I've ever seen in an entitled parent story.
Pah! It was a horrible ending.
But she stopped being a Karen. She started being nice to people and respectful.
Exactly. It's a cold-hearted world, and the only way to survive in it is to be brutal.
And demanding to speak to people's managers?
Bingo.
Half the class fails the midterm after cheaters copy me. I don't have a problem helping classmates. I really don't. I even tutored several classmates during my final semester of undergrad because they needed the help. They all ended up passing their classes with my assistance. This story comes from a particularly tough business information systems class during my undergraduate education. The students in this class were mostly non-technical business majors, so this new material wasn't at all similar to anything we had learned in other classes. Needless to say, most of the students were struggling, including me. I still had a 4.0 in college at this point, though I finished with a 3.99, and was willing to put in max effort to keep my stellar GPA. I started studying hard. I made my own Quizlet sets. I read the book every night. I finished assignments a week early, and I did outside research. After grinding it out in this class for about a month, I was working on an assignment in a room designated for quiet homework time, and that's where our story begins. Several other students from my class were there and working on the same assignment I was on. Judging by the size of exasperation, the irritated whispers, and requests for help, they weren't having much success. Having studied relentlessly for a month, I was having an easier time of it. As I got up to go get some water from the fountain in the hall, a classmate asked for my help. I told him I could do that and I'd be right back. I returned a few minutes later to find what I can only describe as a bunch of busy bees happily working away. This was strange since they were hopelessly stuck 2 minutes before, but whatever. My classmate tells me he figured it out without me. Now, I'm not an idiot, so I know the 5 people in this room probably copied my work off my computer when I went to get water. Scumbag move number 1. But as it turns out,
No one in the class needed help the next day or the day after. Whoever in the study room had stolen my work had forwarded it to most of the class. Scumbag move number 2. I don't mind being helpful, but I hate being used. So I made a plan to get back at the people who had stolen my work. It didn't take long to organize my plan and carry it out. Here's how it went. 1. I changed an answer on the next assignment by multiplying by -1. 1,500 became -1,500 on this question. The next week, I left my computer in the same place as before and went to get water. Just like I had done the week before, 75% of the people in my class of 40 people put -1,500 as the answer to question 3, which was definitely incorrect. I began studying relentlessly for the midterm. Our professor had said he wouldn't adjust the weight of the test if everyone scored particularly well. This class was difficult, and no one was expecting anyone to score over 75%, so all my classmates figured the weight of the test would be adjusted. My plan was to wreck the curve, even though it's not a curve, and deny everyone the adjusted weight by producing a sufficiently high score. I recruited a classmate who hadn't stolen my work to study with. Together, we aimed to score high enough that our professor couldn't adjust the weight of the midterm. Here's how it all played out. No one who copied me realized the answer was incorrect. Every last one of those idiots submitted the wrong answer for question number 3. This next part surprised me, but my classmates began insisting the class was unfair, too difficult, or rigged, and launched these complaints at our professor. One day after class, I had the following exchange, since I was the last student out of the classroom. Professor: OP, do you think this class is too hard? Me: honestly, the class is hard, but if people spend as much time studying as they did complaining, they'd be fine. They really need to just get to work. Professor: I thought the same. Me: deciding spur of the moment my next move. I also happen to know that most of the class incorrectly copied my work on the last assignment. Question 3 should have a net income of 1,500, not a net loss of 1,500. I put down the wrong answer initially. Everyone copied me, and then I changed the answer later. I think you can reasonably conclude that anyone with -1,500 as the answer cheated off of my incorrect work. Professor: I figured they all copied, but I didn't know you were the source. Anyway, thanks for your candor and your dedication to the class. I didn't cheat, so I don't know what happened to those who did, but depending on the class, they would either get a 0 for the assignment or a plagiarism citation, so they got one of those. Fast forward to the test day, and I'm ready to go. I know since most of the students are business majors, they need 70% to pass the class because it's a required course. Hurting them on the midterm will go a long way in helping drop their grades. I take the test, I'm the first one done, and I leave pretty sure I've done enough to deny the class the exam weight adjustment. A week later, we get our exams back. Tests are distributed all around me with scores on the top in red ink: 68, 71, 70, 66, 75, 67, and these are the smart students. Someone on the end of my row takes a test from our professor and lets out a sigh as he begins passing a test down my row. It stops on my desk. 93%. I've won. Some idiot in the front of the class: So, is there going to be a curve? Professor: Nope. Me: What was the high score? Professor: 93. Average score for the exam was 71, so a good number of people didn't get a passing score. Maybe they made up for it on the final and passed, but I don't care. I got mine. Well, just goes to show you, cheating won't get you anywhere.
I can't believe all of those stupid students cheating on a test like that. My angel would never do such a thing.
I don't know, Karen. You sure about that?
How dare you!
Crappy boss will forever regret trying to bring the thunder. Backstory: I started working in care of the elderly before I graduated school at age 17 as a temp worker, and after I graduated, I basically worked full-time for several years, finally got steady employment at age 23. I take pride in my job, and even though I didn't study medical stuff, I've always made sure I know everything I need to know to do a good job, with online classes, certificates, reading up on medications, treatment recommendations, etc. Everything was going well, despite me having 4 different bosses in the first 5 years of work. No one wants to be the boss here. Economically speaking, it's a sinking ship, since it's government-run and dependent on tax money. Then, friendly boss, Lena, joins the story. She asked me to move over to a new department the state was now, by law, obligated to provide, short-term care. She had previously run the emergency care unit at the local hospital, and she didn't take crap from anyone. She let us workers build up and run the department because, as any good boss should, she realized that we knew better what we were doing because we were doing it day to day and what worked best for us, as long as we stuck within the laws, regulations, staff requirements, and budget, of course. Everything was amazing for almost 2 years. Every month, I did the schedules for all 15 of us workers. I did daily planning for all patients. I was in charge of all documentation and all new guidelines and protocols being implemented, since the care provided was brand new in our area. Then, the day of the great sadness came when Lena declared that she was leaving, since she had been offered a job as the head chief of the local hospital. All of us were devastated to see her go, but I mean, good for her. That's when super jerk, Kaja, enters our story. She was already the boss of all the normal elderly care units where I'd worked before. I'd already moved on to short-term care before she was hired as boss, and we had heard exclusively bad things about her. We heard she would always do what she thought was the right thing to do, which was almost exclusively wrong because she was underqualified, had no experience from the actual work, and was just a jerk in general. Our first staff meeting, she told us,
"Either you're with me or against me,
and the people who are against me,
I drown in the local lake."
Okay, great start. I then tried to explain to her that with our previous boss we had worked with trust, since Lena had an understanding that us workers actually knew what works best in our own department, and Kaja instantly shut it down.
"No, I'm the boss. I set the protocols. I decide how my departments run."
Me. Yeah, of course, but I'm just saying we've been working like—
"No, I'm the boss. I'm in charge."
And so it began. Kaja started changing the schedules, the protocols, the staff requirements, the daily rehab schedule, the food schedule, not joking by the way, and she lowered the required medical competence to work at our unit. This means there were people working with us who had no prior experience in the job, had no prior experience in the field, barely spoke the language, etc. Keep in mind, we had dementia evaluation, palliative care, stroke rehabilitation, and so on. Kaja started to try to micromanage everything we did, literally everything. She canceled all the activities we did for the whole business, like pub nights for the elderly, movie nights, summer cafe outdoors, walks, store visits, everything, all without cost to the business. She stated that we're no longer allowed to finish the schedules on our own and gave us 2 weeks less to finish them, which means we now have 1 week to input the schedule, try to settle it between us 15 people, and then hand it to her. She'd finish it and hand it to us the day before it went into effect, and 8 out of 10 shifts weren't covered, or we were 6 people working the same weekend, supposed to be 3. So I told Kaja that I've been managing the schedule for years and was happy to keep doing it, and that she'd still have it 2 weeks early. No. I told her that our activities were 100% within paid hours and no strain on the day-to-day normal business, and we want to keep doing them. No. I told her that we'd prefer to keep doing things as we'd been doing them for years because it worked very well. No. Obviously, I was upset. So were my coworkers, but they never spoke up. That was my job, I guess. There were a lot of incidents that I'm not going to bother bringing up, but just imagine that anything we ever wanted to do for our patients or the people in the dementia units or for the well-being of any of the staff was just no. One thing that had been consistent since I started working there when I was 17, 27 at this point in the story, is that when you apply for vacation or any kind of leave, you input the leave request and then you request a temp to cover your shift, and then you inform your boss that you've done both things. Always been like that. Always. So I did. I requested a day's leave. My mom had a doctor's thing in a town a few hours from here. I input the temp request, and then I walked to the boss's office and informed her. She loses it. Maybe because Kaja's boss was there. I don't know, but she starts yelling, telling me that I'm not allowed to request temps. That's her job. I stand there and take it like a good employee and just say, okay, won't happen again. Big surprise for her when the next staff meeting comes around. There suddenly weren't any staff on the actual ward, and a local politician was sat waiting with her mother, who was being committed to my ward that day, for over 2 hours. I wonder who made sure they were arriving at that time on that day. I told my boss's boss exactly why there weren't any temps scheduled for the meeting. Kaja got fired. Will make me smile for the rest of my life. That boss sounded like a real piece of work.
I thought you sounded amazing. That's exactly how you treat your employees. Never let them start thinking they're smart or know how to get things done. It goes right to their heads.
To their heads, huh? Sure wouldn't want that to happen.
I just hope that poor boss found another job once they fired her.
I hope she found some help dealing with her problems. Sounded like she had a lot going on.
Shut up, Mr. Reddit.
Can I at least get your number? Sure thing. So this didn't happen to me, it happened to my coworker, but I was at the register right next to her when it happened. Cast, we've got my friend, my coworker, we've got the old man, and we've got me. This happened a few years ago when I was 17 and my friend was 18. We worked at a grocery store that had 4 registers set up in groups of 2. So me and my friend were the ones on 2 of the registers, meaning we shared the same behind the counter space. We both have customers in line and are checking them out. I can hear everything going on as we are literally 2 feet away from each other. Enter Old Man. Old Man looked a lot older than us, so he's obviously too old to be hitting on an 18-year-old, but that's exactly what he does. Paraphrasing because it's been a few years, but you get the gist. Old Man.
Hey there, beautiful.
Friend in customer service voice. Hello, how are you today? Old Man.
Better, now that I get to see someone as gorgeous as you.
Friend. That's nice. Did you find everything okay?
Oh, yes. Yes, I did.
Winks. At this point, I'm only half paying attention to the person I'm checking out and focusing on the conversation happening behind me because, gag. Old Man.
Can I take you out on a date?
Friend. No, thank you. Your total is...
Come on, please. I'll take you out somewhere nice. You can get all dressed up and fancy.
Friend. No, I am not interested. Here's your receipt.
Can I at least get your phone number, gorgeous?
Friend. Sure thing. She proceeds to grab one of our store's business cards that obviously has the store phone number on it, hands it to him and says, "Here you go. Have a nice day." Old Man is angry and grabs his groceries and storms out. I turned and asked my friend if she was okay and everything, and she was a little shaken up, but told me that she was glad she got to mess with him. Not sure how many other customers heard the interaction, but we just laughed about it and went back to our work. Hey Karen, have you ever had to deal with something like this? Some creepy old guy trying to get your number from you?
No. For some reason, people don't really talk to me unless I'm the one to initiate the conversation.
Gee, I wonder why. 1 cent obviously makes a huge difference. Back in high school, I worked for a fast food place. Not to name names, but I worked for the US East Coast equivalent of the place that had a smiley yellow star as the logo. At the time I was there, we had a deal on this apple pie turnover thing. We always just called them pies. Regular price for one was 99 cents, and the deal was 2 for $1. Someone way above my pay grade in the company made a rule that we were to automatically do the deal whenever someone ordered pies and then gush to the customer that they essentially got 1 free pie. Cue the Karen. I had just finished the lunch rush and was taking care of the last few stragglers when she came up. All she ordered was a pie. Per the rule, I rang up the deal. As soon as the little price screen flashed, 2 apple, $1, she lost her mind. Karen.
Excuse me? I said a pie.
Me. Well, ma'am, we have a deal where you get 2 for $1. And since...
No. I said 1. You are trying to steal from me.
Me. Not at all, ma'am. The pies are regularly priced at 99 cents, and the deal is $1. So you get a pie for free.
Heck no. You just said they're 99 cents. You're trying to steal from me. Some people don't have a penny more to spend, and you are trying to rip them off.
Me. But ma'am, after tax
You are a liar and a thief. Where is your manager?
I begrudgingly get manager, and Karen starts screaming about how I'm trying to force her to pay more for things she never asked for, and how I was likely going to try to pocket the difference / steal from the company. Manager. Well, it says here you're getting 2 pies, and after tax, that's $105. Karen.
Well, I only want one pie, and she's trying to overcharge me. I want this fixed now.
Manager. I twitch. Trash Goblin, please ring the customer up for one pie only. I do so, and the price after tax comes out to $105. Karen insists that we're still wrong, and manager ends up telling her to buy the pie or leave. Karen tries to demand the 2-pie deal, and manager sticks to, well, you demanded me up here insisting you only want one, so either pay or leave. A perfect example of what happens when Karen makes a big deal out of nothing.
Oh, buzz off, Mr. Reddit. She ordered one pie, and the stupid worker tried to give her 2.
For the exact same price after tax.
Oh, it's the principle of the matter. You wouldn't understand. You don't understand anything about me.
I sure don't, Karen, and I'm hoping to keep it that way. I did exactly what my floor manager wanted me to. So a little bit of backstory. A while back, I was in a wheelchair. My legs were so painful, I wasn't able to stand on them, and I had pain attacks at night, which would last for hours on end. Doctors couldn't figure out what the heck was wrong with me until I got even sicker. I started not being able to hold in food, only liquids. When I went to a specialist and did a blood test, it turned out I had a gluten intolerance, celiac disease. When I stopped eating gluten, I was able to walk within a few months. Turned out I have another disease affiliated with celiac disease called gluten neuropathy. It means that when I ingest gluten, my nerves are affected. To this day, when I eat gluten, the pain returns and I have a really hard time walking. Now, I work at a company as a help desk employee. I help people having technical issues with their internet, so to say. Due to what's been going on, we work at home every other week. Last week was a week I was supposed to work at the office. So I've told everyone who needed to know about my affliction. I also told them about my trouble walking when I ingested something I shouldn't have. So last week I ate something containing gluten. I cannot for the life of me figure out what it was, but it was clear as day. The night before I had to go to work, I went to bed with a lot of pain, and I knew it would get worse the following day. I told my partner I would ask to stay home if I had a lot of trouble walking. The next day came around, and it happened like I thought it would. I was in so much pain, I needed my walking stick to get around. So around 8 a.m., I called my floor manager and told him, and asked if I could work at home. He told me a lot of people wanted to work at home for the most stupid reasons, and told me I should come to the office. So I did. Instead of calling in sick, I mustered up all my strength, took some heavy pain meds with me, and started my journey to the office. Now, normally it takes me about a half an hour, but because I had a harder time walking than my gran, it took me more than an hour. I arrived at the office 15 minutes late and ran into the floor manager when I was taking my things out of my locker. At this point, I should tell you how I looked at that time. White as a sheet, hair in a messy bun, shaking from pain, and leaning heavily on my walking stick. The pain was so bad, I was wincing and almost couldn't stand. My floor manager was floored. He took one look at me, and his mouth fell open wide. He muttered something about not knowing it would be this bad, and talking about my other colleagues and how they asked to work at home for small things, how he had to treat everyone equally, etc. I worked a full day, colleagues watching over me, getting me everything I needed, and taking awesome care of me. I heard one of them say how ashamed my floor manager was about making me come to work, and how his response was everything I had hoped for. Needless to say, he told me whenever this would happen again, I would have no trouble calling in to work at home. Karen demands I give her my eyeball for free. Little backstory. I'm getting into the voice acting industry. I've bought many things to help me set up a booth at home, including something called a Chaotica eyeball, the eyeball Karen is referring to. The eyeball is basically a recording booth in a ball. It's awesome and it works wonders. Highly recommended for anyone who needs to record anything, podcasts, songs, etc. It's basically a portable recording booth. There are two types of eyeballs, the normal Chaotica and the Fat Boy. The Fat Boy only fits the Blue Yeti microphone, which is the mic I had. It broke. I had bought a gently used microphone off a friend, and he also gave me his eyeball which fit the mic I bought off of him. Since I didn't need the Fat Boy anymore, I decided to sell it on Facebook Marketplace. Cast. We've got me, and we've got Karen. The story. I put the eyeball on the marketplace for $100, which was reasonable price considering I got it for $215 and if anyone knows anything about the eyeball, they know it's worth every penny. I posted pics of the eyeball as well as it on the microphone so people know it fits the Yeti and only the Yeti, and said that the microphone was not for sale as it was broken. Couple days go by and I get a message from Karen. She said that she would like to buy it for her son who can use it for his gaming channel. She also asked if the microphone came with it and was willing to pay extra. I told her that the microphone was broken. I was just using it for scale to show it fits. She said that was fine and was still interested in the eyeball. Everything went great. We set up a time and a place to meet. The next day, we meet in the middle between our locations. We show up and greet each other. I show her the eyeball and then she says, "And the microphone?" Like I said on Facebook, the microphone is broken. I was just showing that it fits around the mic.
Well, why sell it if it doesn't come with the microphone in the picture? Poor customer service.
Ma'am, I said in the post that it didn't include the microphone.
Well, give me the eyeball for free since it doesn't come with a microphone.
I'm not going to do that. It's worth over $200.
But it's just foam. I could make one for $5.
Then if you're not interested in paying me $100, I'm just going to leave. I kept my cool, even though I want to do a snarky remark. Karen then starts having a bit of a tantrum, stomping her feet and whatnot. We were getting some looks, but people didn't say anything, mainly because of the town we live in. Probably thought she was crazy.
Give me the eyeball.
Now I know people think we're crazy. For the $100?
For free.
No, ma'am, I'm not going to do that. Now, since you are not going to be buying it from me, I'll be on my way. Sorry for wasting your time. Have a great day. I then walk away, eyeball in hand, and head to the car. She then follows me to the car. I was borrowing my aunt's van. She stands in front of the van and glares at me. She puts her hands on the hood and starts tapping her fingers on it. I couldn't help but giggle at how ridiculous she was being. I've met Karens before, but never one like this. I then get a buzzing on my phone. It's from Marketplace, someone asking if it was still available. I don't take it off until it's been given to the buyer. I replied with, yes. The person responds with, if you can bring it to my place, then I'll give you $125. I was more than happy to do so. They gave me their address, and I said I was on my way. I just had to deal with Karen. She was still standing there glaring me down, but God, or whatever being that is out there, was on my side that day. The car that was behind mine pulled out. I had a way out. I was thankful we met at a grocery store parking lot. Since she still had her claws on the car, I had to get her off. I didn't want her to fake an injury or anything. I honked my horn and she jumped up. I then backed out and drove off. I took the long way to the person's house just in case she followed me. Mind you, my aunt has the same vehicle as every other mom in this town, so she could have mistaken any other one for me, but just to be on the safe side. I get to the other person's house and the exchange went off without a hitch. They were more serious about the eyeball use and I appreciated that. Plus, I got a little extra for my troubles. Got home and blocked Karen. I'm so glad Karen didn't follow me, but wouldn't that be funny? She tries to follow me, but she starts following someone else with the same car as me and gets all the way to their house, then gets mad that it's not me and goes all Karen on them like she'd expect them to know where I live. So Karen, what'd you think of that one?
Oh, I just feel bad for that poor lady, not getting the microphone that she was supposed to be getting.
Come on, Karen. The listing specifically said the microphone was not included.
Well, then why did she put a picture of the microphone?
It was just to show that it was compatible with it.
Oh, shut up, Mr. Reddit. She's just lucky it wasn't me that day. She wouldn't have gotten away, and I would have made her day much worse.
Yeah, Karen, you tend to do that.
Get me your supervisor, now!
Ma'am, I am the supervisor. So, for some background information, I work in a retail chain and live in the UK, where it is law that if the person in question looks under 25, then you have to ask for ID for items such as lighters, etc. It's also law that if the person in question cannot provide ID, then you have the obligation to decline the sale. Even if they are with someone who can produce ID and vouch for them, you still have to decline the sale because the person wishing to buy the item cannot produce identification. Hope this makes sense. We've got the entitled mother, we've got the daughter, and me. So, on to the story. On this particular day, I was standing at my till waiting for any customers. Enter entitled mom and daughter. Entitled mom put all her shopping onto the till and I began scanning. She was pleasant enough, and her transaction went by smoothly. Having paid for her items, daughter proceeded to put her items onto the till. She had a dog toy and a spray paint. Now, in the UK, you have to be 18 to purchase spray paint. Don't ask me why, because I have no clue. So I scanned through the spray paint, and the computer screen turned to red. It informed me that I needed to make sure that the person in question was of age to purchase this. She looked young. I reckon she was 18, but because she looked under 25, I still had to ask her for proof of age. Also, the CCTV is watched over when it comes to items being purchased with age restrictions. Someone is paid to watch over these sales to make sure that I am following procedures and am not letting anyone underage purchase such items. If I am found to have sold such items to a minor, I could be looking at being fired and criminal prosecution. With this in mind, I say the following. Me. Sorry, ma'am, this item is age restricted. Do you have any proof of age on you? The daughter looks a bit startled, but looks through her purse and doesn't find anything. Daughter. I don't have ID on me. I must have left it at home. I am 18 though. Me. Sorry, ma'am, I can't authorize the sale without ID. If you bring ID with you next time, I'd be more than happy to authorize the sale. The daughter shrugged and sighed. Daughter. Oh well, I'll come back another time. I'll just take the dog toy then. I was about to scan the dog toy through when entitled mom enters the conversation.
You seriously need ID for spray paint?
Me. Yeah, it's the law. You have to be 18.
But my daughter is 18.
She may be 18, but I still have to ask her for her ID because she looks under 25.
But she is turning 19 in a week.
Again, ma'am, that may be the case, but without ID, I cannot authorize the sale.
That is ridiculous.
Sorry, ma'am, it's the law. Daughter. Stop, Mom. It's okay. I can come back tomorrow.
We are not coming back tomorrow.
At this point, suddenly the entitled mom comes up with a genius solution to buy the spray paint and bypass the law.
I'll buy the paint for her.
I'm over 25.
That means I am lawfully allowed to buy it.
Me. Unfortunately, you can't, because I know you'll be buying it for her, and if I authorize that, it is still illegal.
That is BS. I want to buy spray paint.
Me. Sorry, ma'am. I can't authorize you buying the paint because I know you're buying it for your daughter.
You don't know that I'm buying it for my daughter?
Yes, ma'am, I do. Because you literally said 5 seconds ago you would buy it for her.
So now you are lying to a customer.
The daughter tries to drag entitled mom away. Daughter. Mom, leave it. Me. Ma'am, I am not lying to you. I am telling you what you said and what the rules are.
Well, I am going to go to the other cashier and buy it there.
Me. That is fine, ma'am. You can try that, but they will give you the same answer I am giving you because I have to notify them of any customer trying to slip by the rules. The entitled mom, red in the face, managed to slip past her daughter and get right up to my face, press her finger into my chest, and scream.
Get me your supervisor, now! I am going to report you for lying.
As she finished screaming, I wiped her spit off my face, calmly pointed to my name badge, and smiled, and in the best retail voice I said, Hi, I am the supervisor of this establishment. I hear you wish to make a complaint about one of our staff. How may I help you? Her face went from red to purple in a second. I genuinely thought she was about to hit me when her daughter stepped in. Daughter, how much is it? Me. For the dog toy alone, that will be $3.99. The daughter paid me £5 and told me to keep the change. I smiled and in my retail voice said, Thank you for shopping with us today. We hope to see you again soon. Have a great day. Entitled mom.
Forget you.
And with that, she was forcibly led out by her daughter. The next day, guess who comes in? The daughter, alone, with her ID. For all you shoppers out there, 2 things. Please bring your ID with you. It's easier for everyone. And if you have an aggressive parent, please refrain from bringing them with you. Have a great day. Karen, can I ask you a question?
What?
Why is it that some people think the laws don't apply to them?
Well, sometimes the laws are stupid.
But it's the law, and we all have to follow it. So why don't you, Karen?
Because I don't have to. Look, Mr. Reddit, don't make me angry. You won't like me when I'm angry.
Are you ever not? I don't want to be on the news. Don't put me on camera. I was standing in line to get into the supermarket today, and the person just before me was a surly, older gentleman who was not wearing a mask or facial covering, and appropriately wearing a biker jacket with a big patch that read, "Forget helmet laws." The store has someone at the door, usually a teenager or an elderly greeter, whose job is to ensure everyone entering the store has a face covering per their nationwide corporate mandate and under our state law. As the man arrived at the greeter, who could not have been a day under 65, she said, "Excuse me, you need a face covering to enter," he said to the old woman in this macho, authoritative voice.
No, I don't. It's okay.
And tried to walk into the store. The old woman goes, "Actually, sir, you do. It's not just policy anymore, it's the law." And he starts spouting off about how it's an unconstitutional law and how the greeter isn't in a position to enforce laws. A minute or two passed, and people further back who can't see what's happening at the front of the line are getting restless. They begin to try and see what's happening. The guy is saying,
Look, you're holding the line. If the masks really do work, then everyone who's wearing one is safe, right? And if they don't, then why do you care?
And she was getting kind of desperate at this point and said, "Well, sir, because I could lose my job if I let you in there." This is where I come in. I hadn't spoken up before because this was a big guy and I'm just a student who's no good in a confrontation. I figured adding myself to the mix would only make the situation worse. So I took out my phone and started recording. I figured he would be less likely to do something violent to the greeter or escalate further if he knew he was on camera. Here's what I had forgotten. I was wearing a shirt from a 5K that was sponsored by our local news, so had Channel X Eyewitness News in huge print across the front. The guy's wife goes,
Good Lord, Howie, the news is filming. What if my work sees this?
So he turns to me and starts telling me he doesn't consent to be on TV and starts making a speech how we're all treading on the Constitution, not respecting people's rights to bodily autonomy or privacy. I'm trying to tell him I'm not with the news, and he's like,
I don't care if you're on the clock or not. I don't want to be on camera, and I won't be forced to wear anything I don't want to wear. When did we forget that this is America?
Now this is where it got crazy. The line stretched all the way around the buildings, and people towards the end were realizing it hadn't moved in a while and were coming up to investigate. An even bigger, more macho guy comes lumbering up and asks what the problem is. Sees this guy going off at the terrified elderly greeter, me shaking holding my phone, and is like,
Sir, what's the problem right now? People are trying to shop.
The maskless guy tells him, and I quote,
Get away from me. This here isn't your business.
The more macho guy proceeds to whip out a badge and identify himself as an off-duty police officer, and that the law is, in fact, his business. First, he tries to have the cop arrest me for putting him on the news without his consent, but I just played dumb at that point. My adrenaline was through the roof, and if I had been able to retain presence of mind, I would have left by that point and shopped somewhere else. The biker guy is now saying to the cop,
This isn't what you went into the academy dreaming about, man, is it? You're not stopping bad guys. You're facing regular people to go against their beliefs.
Cop said, No one is forcing you to do anything, sir. You are free to make your own choices. You can put on a mask or you can go home. Decide what you would like to do because there is a line here. The biker guy keeps saying he isn't doing anything illegal and he has a right to shop in a public business, and the cop just shakes his head and starts quoting the official law that this guy is breaking at him. But the biker guy is just talking over him at that point, and the cop realizes he isn't getting anywhere. So the cop says, Look, I don't want to escalate this, but you're not giving me a choice in this situation. If you won't leave of your own volition, you're trespassing, and starts explaining what will happen. The biker guy is ready to stand firm and says he knows he's in the right, but his wife is smarter and says,
Howie, are you insane? The man's a police officer.
And very ashamedly apologizes as she forces him to leave with various threats. Took nearly 15 minutes to get into the store, caused a major backlog of shoppers, and made poor elderly woman fear for her safety. Just wear the mask or get your groceries delivered. I mean, seriously, people, of all the hills to die on. What is it with some of these folks who just don't want to wear a mask?
Again, if it's something we don't want to do, you can't make us.
This is just another example of how some folks overcomplicate things when you don't have to.
Well, I can't stand people like you who undercomplicate things. How about that, Mr. Reddit?
Made a jerk redo an entire school year. During the final trimester of my last year in high school, we had to do a group project that needed to be finished by the end of the trimester and was evaluated and graded in front of a jury of teachers instead of an exam. I was paired with the biggest jerk in class. Imagine a really entitled, arrogant jerk. Every time we were supposed to work on the project, he would have some excuse to not show up and demand I would work on it alone to make sure the project stayed on track. In the beginning, I tried to complain and talk to the teacher, but she would just say,
"Make it work, it's your project."
After a while, I stopped planning work meetings altogether. He would call me to ask how the project was going, and I would say something like, "Yeah, it's going well. I think it's almost finished." Or, "I'll send you the presentation to prepare for the jury." Little did he know, I had a trump card in my hand. The project counted for 40% of the final grade. Me, doing well in the class, already got about 55 of the other 60%. So even if I got a 0 on this project, I would still pass the class. The jerk had less, a lot less. After it became clear he was just going to use my work to pass the class and the teacher didn't care, I decided to throw out all work for the project and keep the jerk in the dark. That last bit went a lot easier than I expected, as he was happy with me telling him that everything was on track. And the last week before the jury presentation, things became harder. The jerk wanted me to send the presentation, so he knew which part he had to present. I managed to stall a few days with excuses, but 2 days before the jury presentation, I finally sent him an email with the PowerPoint, which was actually an MP3 file with a changed file extension. The next day, I switched off my phone. In the evening, I called him back with the excuse my phone had issues and he was panicking that there was something wrong with the PowerPoint. I told him not to worry. I will check it out tonight and have a working PowerPoint for tomorrow. I would come to the school at 8 a.m. so he could practice his part of the presentation before the jury appointment at 9 a.m. The next morning, I arrived at school a little before 9 a.m., having switched off my phone again. When he saw me, he approached me with a mix of panic and anger, but before I could explain anything, we were called into the room with a jury for our presentation. I just told the jerk to not worry and let me do the talking. We greeted the jury and I started the introduction. The original idea of today was for us to present our project, XYZ. But since I already have enough points to pass the class and Mr. Jerk over here couldn't be bothered to put in any effort, I decided to skip it and instead have a nice day off today. That concludes our presentation. Thank you for your attention. I just walked out on 4 confused teachers and 1 jerk with a mouth open so wide it looked like he was trying to eat a club sandwich vertically. Naturally, there was some backlash in the days after that. Teachers called for an explanation, but in the end recognized I was a good student and I indeed already passed the class without the project. Jerk was angry that he had to study over the summer for a re-exam. All in all, I was happy to have graduated and looked forward to going to college the next year. After the summer, I heard from friends that Jerk failed his re-exam and that, combined with other bad grades, caused him to have to redo his last year. Karma is a jerk. Edit. I see some comments about the teacher, so I think I'm misrepresenting her here. I didn't have the feeling she was a bad teacher. I think she just wanted to give us the chance to work out this problem ourselves. Experience is the best teacher after all. I'm also assuming she thought we worked something out after I stopped complaining when I had my plan. Well, that just goes to show you, whenever you're part of a team, you have to work with that team and pull your weight.
Unless your teammates are beneath you.
Oh, come on, Karen. What are you talking about?
It's true, Mr. Reddit. Sometimes people are beneath others. I mean, just look at you and me.
The bosses should have just paid me an extra $150 an hour. After high school, I started to work at a coffee shop whilst I started my studies at university. The owners of the coffee shop were a cool couple in their 30s. The shop was cool with awesome deep house music, awesome customers, and the vibe was awesome. Getting underpaid wasn't a big concern of mine. I also wasn't paid penalty rates for working weekends or public holidays, compulsory in Australia. At first, working for them was awesome. I met some amazing friends who I'm still friends with now and learned some good skills which I'll use the rest of my life. As I was studying and living out of a home, I did have an increase in bills, so my hours stepped up. I went from 20 hours a week to about 40 hours a week on top of full-time university study. As the uni work piled up, I needed to take some time off for practical classes, assessments, and my own self-care. This caused some tension between me and the bosses as it was only a small coffee shop, and now as my job role had increased to opening and closing of the store, banking, stock ordering, and training of staff, I was needed to be there a lot of the time. I'm not one to say no, so I made it work for some months, often causing me to do 13-hour days at work and then 4 hours of study when I got home. At this time, I was getting tired, stressed, and a bit irritable, and I crunched some numbers and worked out if I earned an extra $150 an hour, it would mean that I wouldn't have to come into work for the annoying 5-hour shift I hated, and my wage would stay the same. Beautiful. It was around the 1-year stage of working there that we had a meeting about pay increase. After a lengthy discussion, it was decided that no, I wouldn't get it due to tax/superannuation expenses from the employer side. After this talk, there was some serious attitude problems from the two bosses, but these would only last a couple of days. The female part of the couple had serious bipolar and would come into work super happy and in a fabulous mood and then turn instantly if I dropped a plate or made the wrong coffee. Her mood would then go back up after 2 hours. I was walking on eggshells around her and was always dreading her epic mood swings. For the next year, I worked my butt off, both at work and university. I took on extra shifts when needed and helped volunteer at the local homeless shelter in my spare time. Over this year, I met some amazing friends at work, and we would often go to house parties or out to dinner, and we built a really good friendship. The bosses, for some reason, didn't like this. It was coming up to Christmas, the busiest time of the year, especially for a coffee shop in the shopping center. We were making the first coffees at 5 a.m. and turning the till off at 9 p.m. We were the backbone for every retail employee in that shopping center. Me and 3 good friends were ruined after every shift, and we decided to sit the bosses down and ask for a pay raise. We were over the moon when they told us they would raise it $1 an hour, but that's as far as the budget could stretch due to being a small business. Over the next year, we all juggled 40 to 50-hour working weeks on top of full-time study, whilst the bosses went on month-long trips to Europe and the USA. They bought a new house, car, and boat, and were living the life while we struggled to pay rent on time. One of my friends got a job offer that was too good to turn down, so she left. She would always come in and tell us about how good her new job is and all of her spare time, and we all got instantly jealous. I was desperate to have some spare time and a decent paying job. My grades were also slipping, so I was on the hunt for a new job and ready to get revenge. I asked for character and employment written references so I could start applying for interns that would be coming up in the following year. Absolute BS. I got advice from customers in relation to work, health and safety, and employer's law. I also built a strong rapport with a number of employees and customers to ensure that if the ship went down, I had people on my side. The time has come where I got a new job working in an admin role for a law firm. Completely different pace than what I'm used to, but I welcomed it with open arms. As I was a casual, the bosses didn't want us to sign any contracts so they could evade money for the tax offices, etc. I decided a better way to do them over was to quit unexpectedly on a busy Saturday morning. I made sure that I did this on a day that my 3 besties couldn't work and wouldn't get dragged through the mud or deal with the bipolar mood of my bosses. About 6 months have passed working in the office where one of the head solicitors dealt with employer/employee disputes. I would read emails coming in and out and realized that I'm entitled to be back paid for the loss of income. I teamed together with my 3 best friends from the shop who had all left the coffee shop, and we decided to each write them a letter demanding to be paid the money we had lost over the years. We each paid for a private delivery company to deliver our letters separately, but on the same day to our bosses, and giving them 28 business days to reply to a request. This then caused them to go to a solicitor and spend a ton of money for advice before replying. We got our replies which stated they were unaware that they were underpaying us and were open to pay us $5,000 each, straight up, or we could go through our payslips and timesheets and request a different amount, but that would be at our own expenses. The 3 other employees decided to take the $5,000, but I knew I was entitled to a lot more and requested 3.5 years of payslips and timesheets. When I requested all these documents, it was in the middle of our winter university break. I had no plans or holidays booked, so I decided to sink my teeth in. I went through 4 years of salary entitlements for retail and hospitality workers and through all the payslips to work out how much I was owed. About 2 weeks later, I had a figure just shy of $30,000. I typed up a nice letter and photocopied 250 pages of my payslips and workings out and sent them to my old bosses, this time with a return date of 7 business days. Otherwise, legal proceedings would commence. I was calling their bluff. I had no money to buy a Coke, let alone a solicitor. 7 days had passed when I received a letter outlining that they will require a further 7 days and have compensated me with $500 or the late turnaround. Beautiful. It is in the 7 days while scrolling on Instagram that I saw one of my old customers from the coffee shop was now attending this new and cool coffee shop that had opened up in my area. I decided to go in and get a coffee when I realized that this new coffee shop was now also owned by my old bosses. As I ran out of the store, I bumped into another customer who told me that my old bosses had purchased the store just as I was leaving and had since also purchased a nearby coffee shop with intentions to make it into a bar. Interesting. After some negotiations back and forth, it was decided that the final figure they would pay me would be $28,500 plus superannuation, approximately $4,000. I agreed that as they were a small business, I would receive these payments in a weekly installment of around $650 for 42 weeks. Fantastic. Shortly after the payments began rolling in, word started to get out to the other ex-coworkers and current employers of their 3 businesses, and therefore the letters started to roll in. Apparently, they had been underpaying staff over all 3 businesses for a number of years and therefore had received a ton of letters. Due to the influx of money-owing letters, they ended up having to sell all 3 businesses, their beloved BMW, their boat, and downsize their house. Shame. They now both work at a local nursery delivering plants to customers, whilst I travel the world. Shame. What is it with some of these bosses who refuse to pay their employees what they're worth?
Oh, shut up, Mr. Reddit. These employees think they're worth so much more than they actually are.
And how do you figure that, Karen?
Well, if you have the privilege of bagging my groceries for me, you should be grateful and not expect anything in return.
Karen?
Yes?
You're an idiot. Karen dumps cookies on the floor, gets forced to clean up after herself. The grocery store I work at instituted a policy that lets us stay open an hour later for medical professionals and emergency services. You know, nurses and the people who respond to 911 calls. We close to the general public at 9, and from 9 to 10 is supposed to be a time for the aforementioned people to come in and shop unobstructed. Also thought I'd mention that we open an hour early for senior citizens. Unfortunately, Karen had her own interpretation of this policy. We've got me. We've got entitled mom, Karen, typical haircut, mid-30s. We've got the manager, 6'5", easily 300 pounds, West African immigrant, not the type of guy you want to mess around with. It was 9:45 p.m., 15 minutes until close, and I was restocking eggs when entitled mom pushed her cart, filled to the brim with groceries. Her newborn baby was sitting in a car seat in the front of the cart. Entitled mom.
Ahem.
Me. Hello, ma'am. How can I help you?
Where are the cookies?
They're in aisle 12. Would you like me to take you to them?
Yes, that would be good.
Since aisle 12 is pretty far from the eggs, I decided to make some small talk, since we were trained to do that. Me. I think it's really great what you guys do for society. Entitled mom.
Thanks.
So, you are a nurse?
Oh no, I'm a mom. Moms are the most essential workers, wouldn't you think?
We weren't allowed to call people out for not being an EMT or something, so I agreed. We got to aisle 12, and she started taking cookies down from the shelf and putting them in her cart. As she was walking away from the shelf, she bumped it with her cart, and the entire shelf of cookies fell down. I had spent an entire hour leveling that shelf, and now all of my efforts were gone. And instead of apologizing and helping clean up, she said, "Oops, I'd help, but I have to get going. My kids are waiting at home," and just walked away. Just to clarify, the shelf itself didn't fall down, but all the cookies did. I knelt in front of the pile of cookies, defeated. I started putting the cookies back up as her cart squeaked away. I would have gone after her, but my store is very committed to the whole "the customer is always right" thing. I started putting the cookies back up, which would honestly take another hour and a half because of the sheer amount of cookies on the floor. About 15 minutes in, my manager comes by and freaks out about the cookies, but then he realizes, TFLJ Martis wouldn't just knock down all the cookies, right? So he asked me, "What happened?" Me, "Some lady bumped her cart into the shelf and everything fell down." Manager, "What?" Me, "Yeah, so I'm cleaning it up. Don't worry, I'll be fast." Manager, "Oh heck no. Where did she go?" Me, "Down the aisle." He took off, like sprinting. I didn't follow him because I wanted to finish the cookies before my shift ended. So the following interaction is secondhand from one of the cashiers. He managed to catch her going out the doors with her cart full of groceries. This was about 10:05 now, past close. Manager, "Hey, you." "Yes?" "My stalker tells me you made a mess in my cookie aisle." "Why?" "I don't know what you mean. I wasn't even in the cookie aisle." Manager, "I can see the cookies in your cart." I'm sorry? I need to go. I'm an essential worker." Manager, "What kind of worker?" "A mom." Manager, "My mother, back in Nigeria, she worked 12 hours a day after my father passed, and she still had time afterwards to clean up her messes." Entitled Mom, "No, really, I have to go." Manager, "Go clean up the cookies." "But who will watch my baby and my groceries?" "You can bring it with you, so your baby can learn how to take care of his own messes." Entitled Mom reluctantly goes with Manager and comes over to the cookie aisle where I'm still slaving away. Manager, "TFLJ Martis, get up." Me, "Okay." Manager, turning to Entitled Mom, "Now clean up the mess." It took her until about 10:45, but it would have been a lot longer if Manager hadn't felt sorry for her, and so he and I started helping her. At the end, she apologized to me and Manager, and she actually paid for some of the broken packages. We helped her take her groceries to her car, where she apologized profusely again. I'm happy there was actually a good ending to this, and Karen ended up learning her lesson and apologized. I just wish it was like this for every Karen. So Karen, would you have helped clean up those cookies if you were the one who knocked them over?
Oh, come on, Mr. Reddit, you know me.
So I'm guessing you wouldn't?
Of course not. That's what employees are for.
Karen wants a male server. Alright, so this happened back in July. A little background first. This is the first steakhouse in our wine industry-driven town. We aren't even a year open. I was part of the beginning staff members that helped open. It's a little controversial among the locals because the company adds a 20% service charge already added on. It's a part of a large corporation on the other side of the mountains, and it's just a company policy. Servers technically get 15%, and then it's supposed to go to the kitchen and bussers and hosts, and it helps pay for health insurance. All lies. Anyways, Fridays and Saturdays are super busy because it's prime rib night, so you have to be quick to flip tables. So I, 28 female, worked as a bartender and server in the bar section because I was good at flipping tables. One Friday night, I was sat with two Karens who clearly had too much work done and very flirtatious with the guys. You can probably see where this is going. Me, "Hello, are we still waiting for two more?" Karen 2,
Yes, we are.
Me, "All right, can I get some drinks for you? Bread or appetizers while you wait?" Karen 2,
No, we'll wait.
"All right, fine with me. I'm busy. I'm about to be in the weeds. So great, take your time." Then I got a four-top that was sitting right next to the Karens. I go through my usual spiel with the specials, blah blah, and then I ask if I could get some drinks going. And I can't remember their answer because all of a sudden I hear,
Oh, so they get service, but we don't?
Me, swearing in my head, calling them all sorts of names, putting on my best customer service smile, and I ask, "Oh, can I get some drinks going? Are we still waiting for two more?" Karen 2, clearly embarrassed, I called them out, and the other table heard.
Oh, no, we aren't waiting for any others, and we're still not ready.
Through my gritted teeth and best smile. "All right, I'll be back in a few." I pull the settings and head to the bar, which is about 10 steps away. I put down the extra settings, turn back around, and one of the male servers is getting their order. My restaurant manager, who hated me, snapped at me. Restaurant manager: "Why is so-and-so taking their order? Why aren't you doing that? Why can't you do your job?" Me: "Well, I just asked if they were ready and they told me they weren't. I was literally there 5 seconds ago, so I don't know what's going on." He always gives a disappointed shake of his head. The server comes up to me, hands me the order. I'm mad, rightly so. I get their order in and go back to check in with them, and they just brush me off like I don't even matter. Then the general manager is making his rounds, but he only talks to people he knows or pretty women. The next thing I know, he's coming up to me full force. Now the general manager is the Gordon Ramsay of this town, and he's tall and has this disappointing look all the time. Everyone's scared of him. You can't please him. He's not pleasant to work for. I have another story about him. I overhear them dragging me through the mud. Karen 2: "We haven't been getting service all night." General manager takes 2 strides over to the bar and says, "They just told me that they hadn't been getting any service. What the heck is wrong with you? Why aren't you serving them? What is going on with you?" He said a lot of other choice words. I'm gapping like a fish. Thankfully, the head bartender steps in and goes to town. Head bartender: "She has been serving them. She goes over and checks with them all the time, but they're being rude and clearly don't want a woman waiting on them. She's been doing her job, and I don't know if you noticed, General Manager, but we're really busy. So if you don't have anything else to say, can we get back to our jobs?" I was like, "Oh, you got served." The general manager took over their table for the rest of the night. Thank God. Man, those sounded like some horrible customers.
They did nothing wrong. They simply wanted a male server.
Well, Karen, sometimes we can't always get what we want.
Not true, Mr. Reddit. I always get what I want.
Especially at the expense of others. Am I right?
Now you're starting to understand.
Excuse me, what have your brother and mother done to deserve an invite to your wedding that I haven't? My dad met and took up with my stepmom when I was 3. My bio mom had disappeared off into the big blue ocean on a yacht for the 3rd time, not believing my dad when he said, "If you leave the kids and I again, we are done." By the time she returned 3 months later, my stepmom had decided that this rather wealthy, handsome, and charming man was a catch and sank her claws into him. To her credit, she was also taking care of 3 kids, 3, 4, and 6. However, at this time, we had people to do everything for us. Nannies for us kids, a chef who everyone called Fish, people to come clean the house. There was a ballroom and a library and a giant teak spiral staircase. Yes, it all sounds so grandiose and silver spoon, and it was. But we lost all our money by the time I was 10 and lived in a tiny house, and Dad had to work disgustingly long hours in order to keep the family afloat. Stepmother Dearest floated from fancy to fancy. One minute she's opening a coffee shop. The next she is selling aromatherapy oils, or she is selling swimsuits and sunglasses. Basically, my dad would bankroll these ideas in the hope that she'd start contributing to the income. But everyone in the small community disliked her so much, they tended to avoid her. That is, except the men she was hooking up with. She had a lot of affairs, to the point that even I, an oblivious kid, and still a pretty oblivious and trusting adult, thankfully my husband is a good person, though he does love to jump out at me from behind doors and almost make me wet my pants, understood that there was something not right going on. Eventually, she went one step too far, and my father finally left her, in the pettiest, most perfect way. 6 months after this, my eldest brother got married. She attended with her son, my awesome little brother in tow. I wrote about this in a previous post, so we'll shorten it here. She basically wanted to bring my 11-year-old brother to an after party at my house, cried and stormed off when she was told no, had spent all her money on wine at the bar, and so a family friend had to give her cash to make her take little bro home in a taxi. After this, she told anyone that would listen that I'd made her so unwelcome that she wouldn't be attending my brother's other wedding in the community we are from. However, the reason she didn't attend was that she had expected my dad to pay for her to go, and he told her to buzz off. After this, I went no contact with her. I moved from Australia to England for love. After 5 years, the man I moved here with proposed, totally unexpectedly, because we were quite happy living in sin and we just bought a house. Considering all the family from Oz would be coming, and I have a ginormous family, likely because there's not much else to do where we are from. We set a date for 18 months' time and notified everyone quickly so that flights and accommodations could be booked. I set up a group chat with everyone invited so that those who were coming could discuss who stays with who, make plans for trips out, etc. Little brother is in the group. He's 17 and finishing high school, living with his mother. She doesn't believe in privacy and accesses all his messages. She obviously finds this chat and starts to go frisbees. I receive an email from her. It is long, even longer than this mammoth story, and full of passive-aggressive digs. She was livid that she wasn't invited. My favorite lines from it were the following.
I just want to know, what is it that your little brother and your biological mom have done for you to support you and your relationship that I haven't done?
I took great pleasure in replying. Little brother is coming because he is my brother. Bio mom is coming because even though we have a fractious relationship, she has reached out to me with love and apologized for her behavior. And, I quote directly from the email, she gave birth to me, and that counts for a lot. I just had my first child. I was willing to forgive the sins of my mother after she did that 3 times over. You are not coming because even though I attempted to build bridges with you, you willfully ignored my olive branch. I am happy to work on a relationship again, but you need to admit your behavior has been downright BS. Ladies and gentlemen, she was speechless. At last, I assume she was, as I received no reply and no further contact. Little brother said that she told him she's not buying me a wedding gift. Terribly sorry to inform you, ex-stepmother, we requested no gifts. All we wanted for our wedding was to have the people we love there. Guess we got the gift of your absence, though. When was the last time you went to a wedding, Karen?
Oh, my eldest daughter just got married in April.
Really? How did it go?
Oh, it was awful. The cake was despicable, the music was trash, and nobody even looked at my dress.
Well, did your daughter like it?
Oh, how the heck should I know? Why would it even matter what she thought of it?
If you don't like it, quit. Message received loud and clear. For almost 8 years, I worked at a popular US chain restaurant which specializes in breakfast food that may or may not heavily feature various flavors of pancakes. Over time, several managers came and went, but the one who stuck around was the ladder-climbing, brown-nosing GM, who we'll call Hope, a narcissistic control freak, mommy dearest knockoff. Hope had the most grandiose opinion of herself. She had a way of making please and thank you sound like forget you. I did my best to get along with her, although when dealing with someone who thrives on conflict, the best often isn't good enough. She made it clear. It was her way or the highway. Her oft-spouted catchphrase was,
if you don't like the way I run my store, quit.
Among Hope's countless trademark annoying traits included breathing, coming into work wasted and talking smack about everyone to guests and staff alike. She often delivered orders without allowing any response, then concluded those interactions with, okay, as if that couldn't get any more obnoxious. Her faux sincerity was almost always accompanied by an annoying crypt keeper cackle. Then she'd roll her crap brown eyes, toss her mouse brown hair over her shoulder, and walk away. Funny story. One Christmas, I was unlucky enough to draw Hope's name for the Secret Santa gift exchange. I seriously considered buying her a batch of wire hangers with a card, simply saying, no wire hangers ever. I decided against it for the simple reason that it was no secret that I did not like her. It would have been totally obvious who bought her the gag gift. I was one of those highly valued employees, but the way I was treated completely belied the compliments and accolades I received, such as my schedule being flipped without my consent, day off requests being denied, while new employees, usually the married and/or single moms, and Hope's drinking buddies got preferential treatment, always taking the side of the guest when they were angling for a free meal, etc. Perhaps the worst was the bullying and pettiness among certain employees. It was like high school. For example, once another employee poked me in the face right in front of Hope and Sunny, the drunken assistant manager. I filed an official complaint and nothing came of it. This is one such occasion where they couldn't claim ignorance. My complaint made it real and they had to address it. Address it they did. They saw me as a whistleblower. Neither Hope nor Sunny could have cared less about staff morale. It was typical of both of those embittered hags to accept hearsay as fact. They rarely did their diligence in getting both sides before plotting a course of action. Oh, and plot they did. Unfortunately, the following shows they responded to my complaint to workplace bullying with malicious intent. It was at this point I began receiving customer complaints. Most of the time, Hope and Sunny would take the word of the so-called customers or the service passing on the complaint without offering any proof of a discrepancy had ever occurred. I later came to learn that complaints were completely fabricated. It was really a coworker just trying to stir the pot. This whole horror story came to its climax when a crazy, now former employee circulated a rumor that I refused to wait on an elderly African-American military veteran because I was prejudiced. Being one myself, I respect all veterans. This accusation was out of character and completely out of the blue. It reeked of sabotage. It was too outlandish to be anything else. So the write-up came. I was absolutely furious as my suspicions that I'd been set up were confirmed. Both Hope and Sunny would not let me get a word in. I finally got their attention by stating in a raised voice that I had a right to have my say. Surprised at my assertiveness, both went slit-eyed and rather smugly said, "Go on." I pointed out to them that all of my guests love me. Several of my regulars are Hispanic or African American, and in nearly 8 years of employment, never once had I been accused of being prejudiced or bigoted. I also pointed out that one of my regulars, a married African American doctor, if my hands were free, would run up to me, give me a big hug, kiss me on the cheek, and hold me so tight I felt like I was being suffocated. Hope and Sunny were having none of it. I also pointed out that the drama-starting liar who filed the complaint against me had been fired. Given her predisposition to lie, the validity of her accusation should be questioned and the write-up destroyed. Based off their surprised expressions, it was clear I had exposed their complicitness in creating a hostile work environment, but they refused to take the bait. Completely done with it all, I flat out bellowed, "I am not, nor have I ever been prejudiced." I'm pretty sure the entire store heard me. Then I went for the zinger that lingers. "You have no idea how many black guys I've dated." You could have heard a pin drop. Amanda, the Creole prep cook, was walking by the open office door when I let out that line, and she nearly doubled over with laughter. There were 2 training managers facing away from us while they were on the computer doing online courses. They almost collapsed onto the keyboard, then turned around looking at me with shocked expressions on their faces. Sunny's face went beet red. Hope's face turned white, and her eyes widened. "You know what, Hope? Remember how you said if I didn't like the way you ran things, I should quit? Goodbye." I didn't give them a chance to respond. My shift was about to start in less than 7 minutes. I took off my key fob, laid it on the safe, emptied my apron, put everything in a takeout bag, did an about face, and walked out echoing, "Have fun trying to cover my shifts." It was exhilarating and liberating all at the same time. It was like the end of Private Benjamin when Goldie Hawn walked out of her wedding and threw away her veil. Except I've never worn a dress. Just kidding. Yes, I have. Aside from returning 2 weeks later to get my final paycheck, I haven't set foot in there. I have no reason to go back. I have a new job at a wonderful company with great bosses that value me as an employee and as a person. I actually look forward to going to work now. I never thought that was possible. Double plus, they don't expect me to be an emotionless robot. So Karen, have you ever been so upset that you quit your job on the spot like that?
Job? I've never had a job.
Really?
No, why would I? Do you think I'm some sort of a peasant?
Oh, come on, Karen, that's not very nice. Most of us have to work. There's no way we're gonna get everything we need in life by just complaining to the manager about it.
Oh, don't be so hard on yourself, Mr. Reddit. Perhaps you just need a little more practice.
Karen needs to mind her own business. As mentioned in prior threads, I'm a grocery/delivery vendor who stocks brand-specific items for supermarkets, but am not employed by any of the stores directly. I have a route of stores to visit and pull products from the back of a specific brand of food and refresh the supply. Most name-brand beer, sodas, chips, snack cakes, and other brands employ their own workers who aren't store employees. After reading this subreddit a bunch, I've started to scope out where in the store the over-the-counter reading glasses sections are in case I encounter any of the extra special host beasts who insist that specifically I must help them, so I can lead them there to help them pick out a pair. Yesterday at Walmart, there was a little old gray-haired man shopping who would occasionally head spasm rather violently, like he had just been stun-gunned in the neck, and each time would shout very loudly. I know from watching a cute TikToker who has a less severe form which resembles his motion that this could simply be Tourette syndrome. People with this seem to have a signature verbal yelp, but don't have any cognitive choice in what the yelp is. The TikToker has a pretty cute yelp and explains some aspects of their own variety and experience in some posts. So this guy wasn't hurting anyone, but would, just occasionally, jerk his head very violently but catch himself each time and would shout at a really high volume in the moment of surprise. As he went around shopping, he could be heard making this shout from 8+ aisles over. He wasn't interacting with anyone, just minding his own business and going off a shopping list like any other person. He came down on a somewhat crowded aisle I was working on at the time, and I just let him be, but saw the other people staring and giving him some space. I understand also that some who have this experience a higher frequency of tics if under additional stress than just the normal frequency alone, such as by being judged in public by it, so I just let him do his thing. As he rounded the corner out of sight, a few people who were near me on this aisle muttered that the man was obviously crazy and that he shouldn't be out in public and might hurt someone. I explained a little about the possible condition and that this could actually be a pretty big milestone for him personally, being brave enough to go out in public and trying to control it, and being able to handle the stress of the stares and whispers, and that if people could stop talking about him, it could actually help reduce his outbursts, possibly. One feral snob of a lady comes over to me a little while later after he had moved on several aisles over, clopping in her business Karen shoes the wrong direction down the aisle and not wearing a mask, naturally, and on a mission. She sternly barked at me about him and told me that he needed to be removed because he was frightening other customers. I told her politely I wasn't employed by the store and that I didn't have any say in who gets removed. I tried explaining that I hadn't seen any frightened customers myself yet before getting cut off as she flapped her mouth blubber at me again about how concerned she was that he was going to hurt someone and that he didn't belong out in the public. I was tempted to say that if anyone needed removing, it should be her, via her own 2 cloven hooves right out the door with that attitude. I was under a time crunch and didn't really have time to find a ladder to climb up in order to clock one across a chin that high up in the air. I just dismissed her away again, that I am not employed by the store, there's nothing I can do about it. I stated that I had seen him for about the past hour and he hasn't made any sign of hurting anyone, and that he's just, and then glared at her with eyebrows raised and leaning toward her, minding his own business. She squinted at me and scowled, and then clopped away and I didn't hear anything from her again. My main regret was not having available time to ask him if I could gather up what was left on his shopping list or help in some way. Carry on the good fight, Mr. Man. I'm on defense for you. Wow, my heart really goes out to that guy.
Oh, whatever. If I had been in there, I would have dragged him out myself.
What the heck?
Especially if my angels had been with me, they could have been scared.
Which could have been a perfect opportunity for you to explain to them that sometimes people have certain conditions that make them do things like that. You know, teach your kids.
Why would I do a thing like that?
My husband is an attorney. I used to work in the electronics section of a toy store. The holidays are, to say the least, a tad busy, you know? Especially with the amount of sales and whatnot going on. And we had a lot of sales. Our sales items, especially for video game accessories, tended to go fast. The problem came when there were items similar or comparable. One would be on sale, while the other wasn't, and it made a big mess of things. A lady came in one day, packed store and lots of chaos, and one of the things she picked up was a video game controller cover. I scanned the item and it comes up as $14. That doesn't sit well with her. Lady:
The sign says it's $12. Why are you charging me $14?
Me: The sign is for a similar item, not this item. The sign even indicates the manufacturer. Lady:
Well, this controller cover was underneath that sign, and I want the discount.
Me, calmly: Ma'am, I can't give you that discount. Customers pick up things and put them down in the wrong places all day in this store. We can't give discounts based off of that. I couldn't even make the computer process the discount if I wanted to.
Don't argue with me. My husband is an attorney. Get a manager to fix this.
Me. Ma'am, it's going to be a while before a manager can get over here. Even then, she's going to say that you can't get this discount.
Call them over. They will fix this. My husband is an attorney.
I call the manager over and proceed to be absolutely useless. I can't leave my register to help people because I'm already mid-transaction. I can't scan her next item or delete the item I just scanned. Dumb safety measures. And it's taking forever for a manager to come around because there are people who actually need assistance. All the while, the lady in front of me is staring at me, muttering nonsense and reminding me over and over that her husband is an attorney. I'm just sitting there, wanting to snap back with, "And he's going to sue a store for a matter of a $2 discount?" Of course, he was stupid enough to marry you, so maybe he will. Either way, I'm darn sure we can afford better lawyers than the lady who can't fork over $2 extra, but I keep my mouth shut. My manager comes and listens to the lady. To my horror, she approves the discount and immediately leaves because she's flustered and doesn't want to deal with her. I scan the next item from the cart. Lady,
that's not the right price either.
Me, having had enough. It's not on sale. These are right over there. Points. And the price is displayed clearly. If you want this changed too, I'm going to have to call a manager again.
Lady, fine, I'm done. I don't want any of it.
She leaves her few items at my register. I have to call the manager back over to cancel out the sale and take the stuff to be put away. My manager is, of course, miffed that the lady was able to waste so much of her time. Oh, and no, we never heard from this mysterious attorney. Karen, I gotta say, this story really reminded me of you.
Oh, how kind of you, Mr. Reddit. Thank you. I really admire how she was able to get the discount.
Karen, that wasn't supposed to be a compliment.
It's just too bad she aborted her mission like that. I would have demanded the manager again and demanded more compensation for everything that cashier put me through.
I guess it's a good thing you weren't there that day, Karen.
You got that right, Mr. Reddit.
Entitled Mom Takes a $5 Tip from an Ice Cream Shop. First post on this subreddit. This is for the Army. So this was a long time ago, when I was about 11 or 12. Now, unfortunately, this mom is my mom. I love her, but at times she can be pretty entitled. This story needs a little backstory, so here we go. When I was 11 or 12, I was in Southern California with my mom's side of the family. My parents are divorced, so my dad was in the Midwest at the time. My dad is a really good tipper at restaurants. He's given people $100 tips. He tries to give people a good amount if they give him good service. 10s, 20s, 30s, and 40s. We're not super rich or anything, but he tries to help people out if they give him good service. He understands people have mouths to feed and rent to pay. However, if you don't give good service, then no tips. So as a kid, I'm used to seeing my dad give people good tips and inherited that from him. When I was in Cali, my dad still sent me money because I was there for the summer. It was about $40, which was a lot to my little kid brain. I didn't spend it recklessly because I was always one of those kids who saves up. Now that that's over, on to the story. I was at this beachside series of shops with my family, which consisted of my mom, entitled Mom, me, and my cousin. There were others, including my entitled grandma, but they're not important to the story. So because it's Southern Cali, it's naturally very hot, especially in the summer. There was an ice cream shop nearby that my mom said we could go into and get something. So Jay and I go in, order our ice cream, and I tell her that I'm gonna pay. The lady who gave us our ice cream was super nice, so like my dad, I wanted to tip her. They had this cute mason jar for tips. I used a 20, and the amount I got back was $5 and like a quarter. So I put the 5 in the tip jar, and the girl was really surprised. She kept asking me if I was sure I wanted to give her the tip, and I said yes. So I left with my cousin and told my mom about my good deed. She had the opposite reaction I had hoped for. She yelled at me, saying I had wasted $5 and demanded I go back in and take the money back. When I refused, she dragged me into the store, told the lady I meant to give her a 1 and that I was confused, and made me put the money back in my purse as she dragged me out without leaving her a tip. If that lady ever sees this and we meet again in some strange way, I'll give you a 20, and sorry about my mom. Anyways, I hope some of you guys like this story. How much do you usually leave for a tip when you go out to eat?
Tip? What a tip?
You know, like the tip, like thanking the waitress or the waiter or the...
Oh, I don't believe in that. They should just be thankful that they have a job.
Karen, you're so mean.
Well, you're so nice, and I'm not very fond of nice people.
I pay rent, so I own this house. Backstory. My parents used to own a house on a big piece of land. When my older siblings went away for college, the house felt too big for our needs, so my parents decided to sell the house, but not all the land. They built a smaller house on the part of the land they didn't sell. A few years after, we moved to a city 2 hours away and kept the house as a place to go during the summer. My parents decided to rent the house as it was well located and had a really nice view. Renting it meant that they could use the money towards the mortgage and taxes. Enter our Karen. Karen and her boyfriend rented the place so she could be closer to her work. From the start, my dad made it clear. The place was for rent and my parents planned on living in that house after retiring. At that time, both of them planned to work for at least another 20 years plus. They would, of course, notify Karen in advance when they wanted to take back the house so she would have plenty of time to find a new place. In return, they asked that she notify them in advance should she wish to move out so they could find a new renter. The lease also stated that my parents would have some of their things in a locked storage in the basement as well as in a shed on the property, and that they would always call Karen before dropping by to get something out of the storage, which was in the basement and connected by the garage so they wouldn't even disturb Karen. For a few years, Karen was an okay renter. She paid the rent through a check each month. She smoked inside and didn't take care of the land, but my dad didn't make a fuss about it. Real trouble started after around 12 years. Every few months, Karen's checks would bounce back. My dad would call her to ask about it. Karen would profusely apologize and rectify the situation. Then it became every other month, until it was every month. Finally, my dad had had enough and called her about the lease and the rent. During the call, Karen argued that since she had been paying rent for the past 12 years, the house was now hers. My dad was shocked since that came out of nowhere. He tried to explain to her that she was renting the place like they had agreed on since the beginning. Karen went on a complaining fit about how she had paid so much over the years and she was the one living there and taking care of the place, which she was not at all. Therefore, it should be hers. She threatened to take my dad to court. Now, where I live, there are many laws which protect the renter, and it can be a real pain to deal with when you have a nasty renter. My dad hired a lawyer to make sure everything was in order. After a meeting with Karen, when the lawyer was present, she realized she didn't have much of a case since all paperwork concerning the house was at my dad's name, and the original lease clearly stated that it was a rental. My dad offered to break her lease should she wish to after the whole debacle, but she wanted to stay in the house. He made her sign a new lease where it stated again that this was a rental and that should she not pay or cause trouble again, my dad would give her the shortest possible notice of eviction allowed by the law. Karen is still renting the house after almost 20 years. My parents are not close to retiring yet. I do hope it won't turn crazy when they decide to take back the house. What is it with Karens and taking things that don't belong to them?
I think that lady deserved that house. Like she said, she had been paying rent for a long time.
That doesn't mean it belongs to her. That's why it's called renting.
Oh, shut up, Mr. Reddit. What do you know?
I know that I do my best to stay as far away from Karens as possible.
Well, apparently you're not too good at that.
A pre-Karen meme, Karen in the wild. Background. I'm from the UK, and this happened to me about 10 years ago. Reading other people's stories, I thought I would add mine to the mix. So I worked in a shopping mall for a small independent chain. They made alternative clothing, mainly. My uniform consisted of a t-shirt with the store's logo on the front. Shop was called Punky Fish, so it was of a fish that resembled a slightly altered anglerfish with a chain and an eyebrow piercing. The t-shirt was black, fish and writing in gold with studs on it. It also read, "Punky Fish, how can I help you?" on the back. You could wear anything on the bottom half. My go-to was crushed velvet leggings and Converse at the time. Anyway, to get to my store, I would usually park in a multi-story space and walk through one of the big department stores that were always connected to it. This time was the turn of Marks and Spencer's. Any non-UK residents who are not familiar, it's an old-fashioned shop with clothing, homeware, food, and beauty products. Their uniform is a black and green gilet, polo or shirt with smart trousers and shoes. This is important. Walking through, I have my bag in hand as well as McDonald's I had picked up on the drive-thru and a drink in the other. Here goes the story. We've got me and we've got Karen. Me, walking through the store, minding my own business, drinking my drink, stops for a second to check my phone. Karen, sharp finger prodding me in the shoulder.
Excuse me?
Me, turns to see angry Karen, bit taken aback because of the prodding. Yes? Karen, did you not hear me or something? I've been chasing you through the store. Me, remembers hearing someone shouting excuse me several times. I heard you, yes, but didn't realize it was for me. What's the matter? Thinking maybe I dropped something or whatever. Karen's face is now red and purple. What's the matter? Is that how you speak to customers? This is disgraceful. First of all, you ignore me. Then, instead of, how can I help you, you say, what's the matter? Me, I hate confrontation. The penny hadn't dropped yet because she thinks I work here. Okay, how can I help you? Karen, still angry. I want this and this size for my daughter. There is no sizes that I need. Get one for me. Me, penny dropped. Miss, I don't work here. This was obviously the wrong answer. You're wearing a t-shirt that says, how can I help you? Me, yes, it also says Punky Fish. Twice. It also has it on the front. I do not work here. This is ridiculous. I'm a paying customer. I don't care what your t-shirt says. I need a size small for my daughter. At this time, enough commotion had gone on that a member of staff came over in full uniform. Staff, what is going on here? Karen, this girl will not assist me. I want to speak with whoever is in charge. This is ridiculous. Rudeness and bad customer service. Employee looks at me, looks at my uniform. Miss, she doesn't work here. Me, starting to wonder why I'm still standing here, looks at the employee and smiles. I'm going to get to work now. Can I leave her with you? Sarcastic grin. Karen, you can't go anywhere until we speak with the manager. Me, okay, well, my shop is out the side door by the restaurant and up towards Starbucks. My manager isn't in today, but I will let the assistant manager know you'll be by to complain about clothes we don't stock and my attitude. It was at this time I left the poor employee with Karen and made my way to my actual place of work. I didn't look back, but I could still hear her shouting about behavior, rude staff, incompetence, shouldn't be wearing tops that say you can help. Sorry, employee, that I left you with her. I explained the story to my assistant manager. We laughed and she said, well, if she turns up, I will be sure to let her know I let you have a verbal warning not to be rude to customers in Marks and Spencer's. Sometimes it seems like Karens just really have it in for employees. Wrong. Employees are lazy and they don't want to help us. Most of them will be glad to help you if you're just nice to them.
Ah, this is where you're wrong, Mr. Reddit. Being nice doesn't get you the things you want in life.
You know, you might have a point there, Karen. I've been pretty nice for a long time, and now I'm stuck in a room with you. Entitled mom tries to manipulate her way to the front at checkout counter. A little background. I work and live in Dubai, and most of the time I shop from Carrefour, close to my apartment here. That's the closest thing to Walmart we have. Evening hours in the supermarkets and malls can get pretty crowded. This happened 3 weeks back, so I was getting some groceries on a Sunday evening after work. The queue for cashier in the evening was pretty long. Fun fact, Sunday we work here. Weekends are Friday and Saturday. Since I'm living alone and I hardly cook, I had around 14 items, which is mostly the snacks I indulge my evenings on. So I was there getting close to the cashier. There was just another guy in front of me with a shopping cart full of stuff, and I was on my phone talking to a friend. Excuse me, mister. I heard someone talking to me close to my left ear. I told my friend to hold on and I turned around. There was this entitled mom with a kid. Now, the kid's not entitled by any means. She was too young to even talk. I told my friend on the phone that I'll call her later since it wasn't anything important. Me, yes ma'am? You mind if we go before you? We are in a hurry. And entitled mom, looks 40, points to the basket in the kid's hand. It's a small basket with some chocolate and a coloring book. So I look at the 8 or 9 people behind me in line, and no one seems to have a problem judging from their faces. Me, sure, no problem, you can go ahead. Now, entitled mom doesn't say thank you, which doesn't matter to me anyway. She cuts in the line, the guy currently at the checkout is swiping his card, and the cashier is bagging the stuff. Entitled mom suddenly turns around and waves her hand and starts yelling. Entitled kid, come over here.
Here.
Surprised as me, everyone in the checkout counter turned around only to see the entitled kid with a trolley full of stuff. Literally more than 100 different items for sure. Everyone in my line combined wouldn't have that much stuff to check out. Me. Excuse me, miss. I was under the impression that you had 2 or 3 items to check out. But this is a bit too much, and I can see no one in the line would approve that. Most of us have been waiting here for over 15 minutes. Entitled mom.
What are you saying? I was here before you.
I was genuinely shocked. I was like, what? Me. No, you weren't. I was a bit confused. Like, maybe she was there and told me to hold the place or something and I didn't notice because I was on the phone. Now, already a couple of people are having big trolleys on the checkout counter, which is pretty narrow. So entitled kid, who is about 14, comes by pushing the cart through the line in a forced manner. Like literally, he was not giving a hoot and doing it by force. So there's one bald guy. He was on the phone all the time. I thought he didn't care or he didn't even notice the whole thing. But he just happened to stop the cart by holding it when entitled kid was trying to squeeze it past him. Bald guy. You're not gonna cut the line. Not today. Entitled kid. Mom, this jerk is stopping me. Now the entitled mom storms past me and goes to the bald guy.
Who the heck do you think you are?
Bald guy. Look, these people are nice. Might let you get away with your crap, but I'm not gonna let it happen. And you need to teach your little jerk some manners. Entitled mom.
I was in the queue ahead, jerk. And don't you dare preach to me on parenting.
Bald guy. No, you weren't. Entitled mom.
Ask that guy.
Me. You tried to trick us into thinking you got 2 items to cut the queue. This time, I was sure that she wasn't in the line before me by just looking at her face. It was literally the face of someone who thinks of themselves as,
I am so smart, the rest of you are stupid, so I can get away with anything.
Entitled mom.
I was here before you, jerk. Weren't you staring at my butt, pretending to be on the phone the whole time?
Me. Now that's it. You're not gonna get on this queue or any queue today without waiting your turn, jerk. I would have stared at a pack of sour candy as opposed to her, and I hate those candies. I really wish that I could have come up with this line there at the moment. So we hold the queue and call the manager. To my surprise, everyone else was calm and supportive, and one guy actually said, like, maybe it would have been quicker if we let her go first, but let's wait and get this crazy lady sorted out. After a few minutes, the manager shows up. Manager. What's the problem? Entitled mom.
I was on the queue first, and these 2 are not letting my kid through.
Pointing at me and the bald guy. Another guy on the queue. BS! She was cutting the line, saying she had only 2 items, and her kid showed up later with a truckload. Manager just looks at everyone to see the nods to confirm his words. Manager then asks the cashier, and she confirms the same. Entitled mom.
These people are lying.
Manager. It's safe to assume that you were cutting the queue, then assuming everyone else is lying, ma'am. So you have to step out of the queue and start in the end of any queue.
BS.
She turns towards me.
You liar.
And then she tried to grab my phone, maybe to break it? I don't know. I withdraw my phone and hand out of reflex. Manager. That's it. You're done. We don't want you in here anymore. Apparently, they can ban customers inside a store. So entitled mom was removed immediately by the security, and the manager apologized to everyone for their trouble. The whole thing took about 20 minutes of everyone's time, and that was it. Why do so many Karens have such a problem standing in line?
Because we have better things to do, Mr. Reddit.
You mean like trying to take people's Nintendo Switches?
And their PS4s.
I used to work here, lady. Background. I used to work at a convenience store in my college days, one famous for its partially frozen slurpable drinks. We were located just off a major highway in South Florida, so we got a ton of traffic day in and day out, with plenty of regulars each day. I worked there for a few months until a string of robberies started happening at various convenience stores in my area. To paraphrase Will Smith, one convenience store got hit too close to mine, and my mom got scared and said, "You're quitting that job and finding a different one." Much as I loved that job and hated quitting, my mom was right, and the store did wind up getting robbed about a week after I left. Nobody was hurt though. I left on good terms with my boss and coworkers, found a job at a local grocery store shortly after that. The story. After class one day, I decided to pop into my old store for a drink and some snacks. Bear in mind, I was wearing a red and black polo that looked distinctly different from the store uniforms, but used the same basic color palette. I was rather chatty with the clerk while I did my shopping. I set my snacks on the counter, then walked over to the drink dispenser, grabbed a cup, and before I could turn the nozzle to start pouring that half-frozen delight, I hear the familiar call of the wild Karen behind me.
Excuse me?
Me. Yes? Karen.
Can you pour me a large red one?
Me. I guess. I poured her one and started pouring one for myself.
And I need some taquitos and some scratches too.
Me. Cool. Sounds like a fun afternoon for you. Karen walks off to go grab something, and I head up front to wait for my cashier buddy, Jeffrey, to finish ringing up a customer so I can also check out. A few seconds later, Karen steps up and stares at me for a minute. I felt her eyes on me and asked her politely, "Yes, ma'am?"
I thought I told you I wanted taquitos.
Me. Yeah, and scratchers. And?
Aren't you going to get them for me?
Me. No, I can't.
What do you mean you can't?
I'm not allowed back there to handle the food or the lotto. You'll have to wait for him, points at my friend, to check us out first.
Excuse me? I'm a paying customer and in a hurry. You work here, so I take priority over you.
Me. Huh? I don't work here. I'm also a customer, and I got in line before you. Karen.
Don't lie. I know you work here. I've seen you stocking shelves.
Me. Oh, I used to work here a while back, but I quit some time ago. Maybe that's why you recognize me.
Very funny. Now quit being lazy and do your job. It's bad enough you're lying, but you're not even smart enough to realize you're wearing the uniform, so I know you're lying.
Me, irritated at this point. Really? Of the two of us, who's the smart one? Look at my shirt and compare it to his. Do you see the style differences or lack of a company logo? Karen looks back and forth between me and Jeffrey, who's trying really hard not to laugh at my situation. We had a brief exchange of looks between us where I asked him to help me out, and he basically said, "Heck no, this is too funny." After a few seconds, Karen gets flushed, clearly embarrassed. Karen.
Oh, you don't work here.
Me. Ding ding ding, we have a winner. Karen.
Well then, why did you get me my drink when I asked you? You're just confusing people now.
Me. No, I'm a nice person and helped you because you asked for it. You are clearly not, since you lack basic manners to say please and thank you or even apologize for the misunderstanding. Karen to my friend.
Why didn't you say something then?
Jeffrey. You kept yelling. I couldn't get a word in edgewise, and he can handle himself. Karen goes quiet and sheepishly asks my friend to get her taquitos and lotto scratchers, which he does while clearly suppressing a grin after finishing ringing me up. I grabbed my stuff and hauled off to the side. The register was right near the door, so I'm waiting there. Karen pays for her stuff and tries to walk past me, avoiding eye contact. Just as some final salt in the rudeness wound, I opened the door for her as she left and said after her, "You have a nice day now, ma'am." After Karen got in her car and pulled out, my friend doubled over in laughter at my situation. I threw a Twinkie at his head for not helping me out, then demanded a free taquito in my best imitation of Karen for the inconvenience. Jeffrey, if you're out there reading this, you're a jerk and I miss you. Hope everything worked out for you. Wow, it sounded like that Karen really wanted her taquitos.
And why wouldn't she? Taquitos are the best.
Man, they are pretty good.
Oh, I love gas station food, Mr. Reddit.
To be honest, I do too. We might have to go get some in a little while.
Perhaps we can terrorize some employees while we're there.
Hold on now, Karen. Oh, don't get ahead of yourself. Compliance with the postmaster. About 5 years ago, I moved into my house and I received an astonishing amount of junk mail for the previous owner. The elderly lady I bought the house from retired and moved south, but spent most of her time here. Thus, over half her life signing up to every conceivable amount of junk mail and magazine possible. I've moved many times, and it never was much of an issue, but the amount of mail received per day was insane. I live in a remote area, low population, under 1,000 people per town around here. I have a pretty large mailbox on the street. Thing is heavy duty, thick steel. Plow trucks can throw ice and snow on it all day and it doesn't care. But it's 2 to 3 times the size of a standard mailbox. In 3 days, this mailbox would be full. We get the mail once a week. Only thing that is coming in the mail in today's age is a statement that you've already seen online or some form of Nastagram which no one is in a hurry to read. So once a week in today's day and age is pretty reasonable, at least for these parts of the world. The amount of mail was so out of control We were losing valuable garage can space, and we couldn't always toss out all the mail received due to room in the can. So I took a stand and used a black Sharpie and wrote "Return to sender/individual no longer at this address." The postal worker didn't appreciate this extra workload and would leave everything in there untouched. As a result, they never checked the mail for new outgoing mail. Anything addressed to us that actually live here would be left at the post office for us to pick up out of spite. The post office was intentionally being lazy and not following the rules. I only know this because I was upset enough to actually look up the regulations and procedures for this, which they weren't adhering to. Anyway, when I called and complained to the postmaster said they would not remove the mail from the mailbox. I said, "Understood. It's a federal offense for me to tamper with someone else's mail. You refuse to take ownership. I have no choice but to place this pile of mail each day on the ground by the mailbox." The postmaster said what I was hoping for, "But it would blow all over the place and become litter, and you would be fined." My reply, "I personally wouldn't be fined. It's not my mail. However, anyone that would inquire about the litter, I would explain your personal position on it despite the responsibilities noted on subsection A, paragraph B, stating how to handle this situation. How do you think that's going to go? Your call." The postmaster hung up on me. Couple days later, after the mail piled up out there, the postal worker stopped. At first, they had one of those little hand claw grabber things, but it just wasn't cutting it due to the amount. Also, it rained a lot the night before. Each time they would grab a bit of mail, they would have to carry it over their lap, getting water all over their lap. They finally had enough and physically got out and shoveled every last bit of it into a plastic bin and heaved it in their Jeep. This was 5 years ago. To date, I've only received 2 to 3 items of mail that didn't belong to me. When I write "Return to sender," that mail is collected immediately. Never heard a peep from that postmaster again. That would be horrible, to keep getting mail from people who don't live there anymore.
I would sue the post office if that happened to me.
Oh, can you sue the post office?
Oh, Mr. Reddit, you can sue anyone.
How do you think it is that I've never had to work a job? How I double-dipped on the same scholarship. In my university, there are usually 2 regular award periods, each at the start of a new term. During them, a ton of scholarships and awards are up for grab. Additionally, throughout the year, there are special scholarship applications because the donors want the money to go out right away. In my second year, one such scholarship opened in December. Its requirements, however, were way more than it's worth, but any free money is good money. The donors offered 4 awards, each valued at $5,000, for the best students in engineering. The eligibility criteria included a 2-page essay on your leadership qualities and community contribution, and 2 letters of reference from professors on top of a minimum 85% degree average. Keeping in mind that this is December, which is the month of finals. Students are incredibly busy studying and taking exams, while professors are preoccupied with grading, dealing with leniency requests and such. Needless to say, there are a few students who would or could apply. Fortunately for me, I already had 2 reference letters ready for a competition I was in earlier in the year. I only had to ask the professors to readdress the letter, which they happily did. I got the award and the money was applied directly to my tuition account. Fast forward to January's regular scholarship period. When I was applying, I noticed the same special award was reopened for application. My guess is that they didn't have enough qualified students the first time. My initial thought was, oh, I got the award, probably can't reapply. But upon reading the fine prints, there was nothing that prevents me from reapplying. Just to make sure, I sent an email to the award committee asking about it. Came a short reply email that said, just comply with the award terms and conditions. If they didn't say you can't, then go ahead. I saved the entire application instructions and this email, then submitted the same package as last time. I didn't think I would get it again, but I was throwing a squid at the wall to see if it sticks. It did. I got the award and the money applied to my tuition account. On top of all the other scholarships, I got a check back totaling almost $5,000. About 2 weeks later, I got 2 of the same email asking for a bio and a picture to be included on the donor's website. Half an hour after the emails, I got another one that basically said something along the lines of, hey, you weren't supposed to apply for and get the same award twice in the same academic year. We will now have to deduct the money from your account, but in a more professional way. I forwarded them the go-ahead email along with the award terms and conditions. In my email, I also politely pleaded with something along the lines of, "Hey, you said I could. I don't have money to pay that $5,000. Already spent it on textbooks. It isn't fair to punish a hardworking student for faults not their own." I also responded to the 2 bio request emails separately with 2 different About Me paragraphs that basically humble brag about how hard I worked and how much I deserve the money. A couple days later, I got an email allowing me to keep both awards. They said the admins have advocated to make up the Golden Scholarship category to put me in. In the email, they also have a lengthy paragraph justifying why I deserved it, probably to avoid admitting that they messed up. As a result of this, the general scholarship guidelines at the university were updated to stipulate that no student will be allowed to get the same scholarship more than once during an academic year. Karen pulls a reversal. Not my story, one for my fiance, happened early today. She was at the Walmart in our town doing some shopping. I'm not a big fan of heading into stores right now, and it has never bothered her. I'm way more nervous about getting sick. Sue me. On her way in, she got stopped at the door. This isn't particularly odd, given the current state of things. The policy for this Walmart, or all of them, I'm not sure, is that not too many people should be in the store at a time, and that makes perfect sense. Most people, customers and employees alike, are wearing their masks and gloves, so generally the environment seems quite clean. After waiting for only a few moments, she was let in. The store was slightly crowded despite the attempts of keeping a low population. But my wife had decided that there was one item she wanted more than anything else. Sugar-free pudding. Not for me. That stuff makes my stomach turn. Wading through the less crowded aisles, she made her way into what she thought was the pudding aisle. But alas, a horrific lack of glucoseless savory soft sweets were seemingly absent. So, only slightly deterred, the rest of the grocery shopping took place. Detergent, paper towels, Hot Pockets. And food in general came. For a while after getting literally all the other groceries, she tried to find another aisle for pudding, one that didn't exist, so she made her way back to where she had started this journey. And there she was, atop a pedestal in front of all that delicious, desirable pudding. Karen. She was tall, blonde hair pulled back into a ponytail. She seemed older, not the typical age of a Karen, but one could be forgiven for a slight moment of mistaken assumption that she was an employee. She stood atop a metal stepping ladder that had a cart attached to the front with a myriad of boxes on stock, waiting to be introduced to their shelves. However, something caught my fiance's eye. The boxes were full of baking supplies, flour, baking soda, the whole 9 yards, all of which belonged on the other side of the store. This cart and ladder combo wasn't even supposed to be in this aisle, and there was no other employee in uniform nearby, so she clearly didn't work at the store. Unless Walmart had introduced some kind of plain clothes division. She had her ungloved hands reaching all the way back into a box of probiotics, a shelf that, given the woman's height, the stepladder wasn't technically needed. She even had her face only a few inches away from the product without a mask on, trying to read whatever she thought was on those bottles. My fiancé, ever the non-confrontational woman she is, kept her mouth shut and simply watched the woman take the probiotics out, look at them, put one on the stocking cart, put every other one back, and continue to mess with them. And then the horrifying moment struck. Her eyes scorched around and landed on my fiancé.
"I don't work here,"
she scoffed dismissively, and then turned back to continue her ministrations, which left fiancé baffled, trying her best not to look like she needed anything. She didn't mind waiting for whatever this Karen was up to, as the pudding she wanted so desperately was gonna be there by the time she was done getting to know the bottles of probiotics. After another minute or so of waiting, the woman turned again with a loud huff, knowing that the pesky, nervous shopper was still standing there awkwardly.
"Do you need something? I don't work here."
My fiancé finally squeaked out a little, "I don't mind waiting," which dragged another sigh out of the lady.
Unbelievable. If you have a problem, learn to ask someone who works here next time."
She stomped her feet down the 3 metal steps onto the floor of the aisle and pushed the cart forward with such a ferocity that the orange aisle marker, if you frequent the store, you certainly know, fell to the ground with a clap. The fall had been enough to bust the corner off of the sign, but the Karen had her sights locked not on the broken property, the carnage laying at her feet, but instead at my fiancé. With the speed and fear of a mouse, my fiance finally obtained that half-liquid, half-solid gold that she had been wanting so desperately, the sugar-free pudding. Like she was holding the Holy Grail and a boulder was about to roll her over, my fiance dipped out of the aisle, stepping over the broken piece of sign in the process and fled the scene. Before she could get too far, she heard the last of the woman's whining, more maskless huffing and puffing, along with another set of stomp, stomp, stomps to surely start messing with the probiotics again. But oh no, this isn't where it ends. As my fiance was at the self-checkout, slowly bagging her groceries to make sure she had as few bags as possible, another horrid incident with this lady began. Now, to set the stage, let me be frank. My wife has a peculiar way of handling herself in public. She always had her head down, fiddling with a fidget cube in one hand and stacking groceries with the other. To the untrained eye, she'd look far less independent than she really is. As the Karen wound up finally deciding what probiotics she wanted, she came around the self-checkout area with only that single bottle. Whatever half-liquid, half-solid gold she had, good for her. Now, the self-checkout lines have a generally short length, even spread out across most of the little area they're in, with only one person to take care of any malfunctions or bagging errors. Short-staffed, likely. The Karen, bottle in hand, upon seeing my fiance once again, practically beelined to the assistant. My fiance has a massive baby face issue going on, so the next thing she heard wasn't surprising.
Excuse me, this kid needs someone to help them. Do you know that I had to help her in the back because you aren't staffed enough? I should be getting paid for this at this point.
She loudly protested, a hair flip going along with her tirade. Oh, the assistant, clearly caught off guard, asked, "Is that your daughter?" Another scoff.
No. If she was, I would be even more upset how little help you have here. So do you mind?
Before the assistant could come and help my socially inept fiancé, she managed to let out a, sorry, I don't need any help, before practically breaking the joystick off her cube in a mortified moment of fidgeting.
Are you sure?
The Karen roared out, less like a lion and more like a boar.
Because you sure took plenty of time just standing there and waiting for me to help you. Do I look like an employee here?
She gestured to the floral, short-sleeved shirt she was wearing. At this point, the self-checkout assistant seemed to somewhat understand what was going on and tried to redirect the wild animal's rage. "Ma'am, if you like, I can talk to my supervisor about getting you some coupons for your help." Tactful. Upon hearing that she had finally been paid for all the work she did, she let out one final, relaxing sigh.
Yes, that would be wonderful.
She folded her arms, bottle of probiotics sloshing again in her hands.
Gosh, I'm so sorry. Everything going on right now just has me so worried.
She emphasized this with a sniffle, rubbing her nose against the side of her hand. Yeah, real worried. Regardless of whether or not the Karen got her precious coupons, my poor wife-to-be decided that she didn't want to stick around for the festivities. Quickly finishing up her bagging, and not nearly as compact as she'd like, she made her way out of the store after paying the terminal. In fact, the fact that she had 3 bags filled up 2/3 and not fully 2 filled bags is what she was most upset about upon getting home. Really puts things into perspective. Wow, that Karen really had a thing for her probiotics, didn't she?
Oh, I love probiotics. I take them every morning before I do my Zumba.
Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard.
Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.